Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled July 14th, 2020 meeting of the Community Development and Human Services Committee. My name is Matt Westmoreland. I serve as chair of this committee. I am currently joined today by council members Carla Smith, Amir Faroki, Michael Julian Bond, and Joyce Shepard. Council members Antonio Brown and Madeline Archibong will be joining us soon, and Ms. Archibong has joined us just now. I will make a motion to adopt our agenda. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. If you will open that vote.
One moment, please. Vote is open.
Seven yeas, 0 nays. The agenda is adopted. I will go ahead and make a motion to approve our minutes.
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith.
One moment, please.
Ms. Shepard or Mr. Bond?
All right, mine is zooming around and around. It's not plugging in, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bond?
Yeah, I'm pushing my button, but it's not registering. Yay.
Same thing
Okay.
with me. I don't know if something weird is happening.
Yep, good deal. 7 yeas, 0 nays. Our minutes are approved. Next up, we're going to move into public comment. Ms. Pouldini, if you will read the script. And then, colleagues, we have 27 minutes and 3 seconds of public comment.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The Community Development Human Services Committee meeting is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with OCGA 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting by dialing 877-579-6743, conference ID 831-599-1256, which is noted on the July 10th, 2020 public meeting notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlantaga.gov, the Council's YouTube channel, or the Council's Facebook and Twitter pages via @ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Community Development Human Services presentation page. The agenda was published and made available on July 10th, 2020 via atlantacitygA.iqm2.com. In addition, the public was able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6089 up to 1 hour prior to this meeting. These comments will be played following this message. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members beforehand. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. And we will now begin with public comment.
Hi, this is Dr. Dora Poon, and I'm calling to urge you to vote yes on the Rayshard Books Budget Amendment Bill so that we can hold 50% of the APB's 2020 budget in the trust fund. I believe we must incentivize the reimagining of public safety and take action towards better police accountability. I believe that this budget amendment bill would be a great first step forward and a catalyst for the communities, the city council, and the police to come together to collaborate, coordinate, and create a better system. I believe a better system of public safety will need to incorporate community development and human services. Community development and human services is a crucial component to public safety, again. And currently it is grossly underfunded, and I believe that ultimately funds do need to be reallocated more equitably among all the sectors. Therefore, please, we need this first step. Please put the community's best interests first and vote yes to the Rayshard-Brooks budget amendment bill. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.
Hi, my name is James Crawford. I'm calling in support of investing in our Black and marginalized communities through funds and development, whether that includes the Rayshard-Brooks bill, the Rayshard-Brooks Peace Center, or anything including that. I also support Resolution 20R4120 so that they partner with the People's Uprising Task Force to study and expand opportunities for underserved communities in Atlanta. I think we should really be listening to our young leaders right now, and the People's Uprising Task Force is just that. So please listen to them and see what they have to say. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Lampert, and I live in Atlanta. I'm calling to voice my support for the Rayshard-Brooks bill and Resolution 20R4068. And I'd like to see 73 held from the police department so that we can reimagine public safety. In the wake of such rampant police brutality against people of color and demonstrators in our city, the funds for APD certainly deserve a high level of scrutiny. We can use our time wisely to examine the mechanisms behind the failures of the department, ensure that moving forward we're not funding a police department that harms our community and commits acts of violence against the people that we're trying to protect. There's de-escalation training, cultural awareness, and implicit bias in APD have clearly failed. And we just can't continue public funds as a department which is not ineffectual but harmful. The police force currently only serves some, and it hurts many more, and with creating long-term generational consequences. We have the ability right now to change that, and we can do that by withholding these funds to give ourselves time to investigate, collect data, and talk with our communities that have been harmed so that we can reimagine a kind of public safety in our city that truly serves our city and not just a few people in it. Thank you.
I am an ancient ancestor, common warrior, genetic Moorish man. And I want to make comments to this community development and research community about the country we live in. We see different people, Caucasian and black, walking together, standing up for right. I listened to an organization yesterday, Mr. Westmoreland, that said we need to teach our own Caucasians how to treat and recognize the rights of the carbonated people, carbon 12, genetic people, Moorish people. So I ask you, with the killing of the young child, 8 years old, over this Shepherd district, don't you think the community development should be willing to have individuals that you can put a coalition together and go into the community and teach how we can dialogue and find ways to enlighten the people? Because our people miss our people miss overstreet. Our genetic people have not denied themselves. They have suffered so long they're killing one another without even recognizing that we are all connected. There's no color line, never was a color line. So with that being said, let's do that with you, Westmoreland, so we can have in Atlanta communities that won't be out having them among their community members by any means necessary, because knowledge itself will change that overnight. So let's put that coalition together and let's do something to resurrect the condition of our genetic people who are the largest number of people yet in Atlanta. Thank you. Not us, make our hotel. Brother, it's on my hand.
Greetings to you, council members and staff, and special greetings to you citizens of Atlanta watching and or listening to
of Government in Action, and Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. To a meeting of Neighborhood Planning Unit ARPA came a group of citizens, including residents of a HUD-supported senior citizen facility, in an attempt to be placed on the agenda to air the concerns of citizens along the Campbellton Road corridor. I reported that rejection to the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Secretary sent a letter to the regional office, and the regional office contacted me and asked me to take up the issue with Kieta Homes, city planning. The mere fact that the regional office listed Kieta Homes as the HUD designee lets me know that somehow HUD is not being informed of who really is responsible for citizen participation in Atlanta relative to HUD funding. My attempt to question the representative from the grants manager office during the grants presentation to this committee was also rebuffed, even though I stated that I wanted this information to help me prepare for my second letter to the HUD Secretary. I now ask you to obtain the sign-in sheet from the NPUR meeting, the meeting where we held the election of NPUR officers, and assign a reputable person or persons to ask each attendee what he or she felt should have been done differently, if anything. We will be met with opposition from this request from people like Castaneda Robinson, Calder Square, Ricardo Pickles, and Ned L. Scott, Alfred White, and Allison Hathaway from the NPUR 9.
My name is Ron. I'm trying to make a comment, and I know the process, but it took a long time to come in. But I did make a comment before 12 o'clock, so I had a chance to finish it. And community development, I hope it's not something that's being taken lightly, because I have been saying it, and I want to continue to say it. And I'm asking you, as elected officials, to examine carefully your the policy that you vote on, and what will be the impact on communities throughout the city of Atlanta, all the communities, and to pay special attention to the African American community. There's a lot of attention about statues. There's a lot of attention to disparities economically, and just through the judicial system. But all these here systems that we live by impact the lives of African Americans in a historical, unique way. And we have to be about the business of correcting those ways. So every piece of legislation on the agenda, I hope that you measure it, because we have built stadiums and turned them over to ownership that have an impact on the private ownership, and with dedicated tax money, and we create transportation systems that the community have had a lot of questions about. But all of this has an impact on our community. My name is Ron Shakir, and I would hope that we have learned from this pandemic that we should be reminded even more by what Martin Luther King said, that when we spend more time developing shiny things instead of human development, we have lost our way. I appreciate your work when it's done with what God has created us to be in this expanding democracy in America, and that is fairness, justice, and well-being and fairness for everyone.
Yes, this is State Representative Abel May Thomas. I would like to first say this is a great discussion we have in Atlanta, but it needs to go deeper. I think that people don't understand that when there is deeper, we came up with they got it's like these it seems like a way to put on we just okay people back to house and other people have just brainstormed. So that's a level of stability responsibility, what happens, we can't be a part of. Also, it is important to know that just training alone without other support systems will not solve the problem with Band-Aid on it. If we really want to get towards a weak situation, it's complicated. This type of weakness that we get this time and we take this out, what we call slave play. It's after the 60s, how slave that it deputized people to go all over the country that slave get slaves is wrong to speak. So the bottom line is the baby is basically the whole thing. It's okay. So we're not trying to say that the next one successful. You can see the most used by the whole successful, but you also can believe in the you have we bring the person based on the fact that they need to finish society. What you been trained on how to react to it after that, a person of color can be retrained to expect them as a culture body and also this is a possibility of us going forward because we always keep it, we always together. I do think that the resolution will be a good step forward for the discussion today. And so I think we should go forward with this resolution. And that's been a purpose that we definitely put thought for us to be dialogue and also follow this group of students. Mabel Thomas, state representative, reclaiming my time. As an elected official, I think we do have a little bit more time. What I just want to do is to say that it's a great dialogue that we have, but it has to have a turning point and it has to have an ending point. And I think that to vote yes for the Richard Group resolution would be a start. It would begin to look at the dialogue of the militarization of the police, but also it also would look at the fact that the whole mindset of the police departments throughout the country has to be shifted. I think in the training process, it must be a process where they systemically put in the minds of the officers that there's a difference of human beings in terms of how you treat a white person, how you treat a black person, how you treat a person of color. And the reality is that only one race is the human race. And I do think that some of the recent acts of violence that's taking place does give people a chance to sort of run back into what's familiar and say, okay, we need more money for the police. But what does that mean? More money so nobody will shoot into a person's car? Or that the police can catch the person after they shoot into a person's car. Bottom line, what we have to have is crime prevention and a spirit of stability in the society. The reality is that you can't let any circumstances get out of control. And obviously, whether we want to deal with it or not, that situation at the limits was out of control, has been out of control for at least a week of people doing unlawful things. And yet the police is, I guess, making a point, I guess, to say, see what happens if you don't have us. Well, that's not the right way to do it because we all in this together, as we say. I'm just a part of a group of people that's on the ground, hear the people's cry. The people are weary and tired of being treated the way they've treated in Atlanta. They're not going to continue to go forward. They're going to continue to be in the street, and a plan must come out of it. And the plan must come, that we call organically out of the people. And so it don't matter how many people try to loot it, try to divert it. If this is God's time for a movement, it will go forward. And so people say, well, I really did like these different groups in the street until they started looting. No. Somebody looting to get a container shoe or some diamond or whatever they're stealing. And the reality is that does not mean that the people will peacefully protest. The point is not. So you can't say, well, I was going to like Black Lives Matter until somebody said they looted. You know, everything that's happening cannot be put on Black Lives Matter. Don't be crazy. How could it be?
Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Malcolm. I live near where the Civic Center motor station stops, and quite a few elderly, homeless need assistance, and I really don't know what to do or what to tell them. Is there anything that is available for the elderly homeless that are just sitting on the bench day in and day out, in the rain, in the sun? Again, as a citizen, I don't know what I can do. There's a gentleman that lives in a tent across from my building currently, and it's obvious that they need help. But I'm not sure, as a citizen, what are the resources that are available? How do you go about helping these individuals? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Natasha Morales. I'm a resident at the Centennial House, downtown Atlanta. And my concern is there is a parking lot across from my building where late at night there are individuals who are over there doing donuts basically in the parking lot. And there are a couple of homeless people that live over there. My concern is that if one of these cars spins out of control, it could be detrimental not only to their lives, but lives of the other people that are around and also the homeless people living there. I'm wondering what is their plan, what plan is there ahead, or some type of, I don't know, ordinance that will be placed into effect where we'll have more, maybe police monitoring the area. Or something to where we can ensure the safety of not only the people over there, but also the noise that the residents unfortunately have to hear in the wee hours of the morning. Thank you.
Hi, this is Yolanda Thomas. My contact information is 404-271-5554. I am the president of the Homeowners Association of Centennial House Condominium, and we have been experiencing parking problems for several years. The condominium is located on West Peachtree Place at the intersection of Williams and West Peachtree Place. And there are cars that are parking on the side of our building, and they are essentially in the road. And we have been calling Atlanta Parking. Some officers ticket the cars, some officers don't. But we do not have the proper signage on our street, and we do not have the curb painted yellow, so cars continue to park there. And it's beginning to be more and more of a problem. Residents have complained about being hit, almost being hit, because when you exit our parking deck, you have to drive on the wrong side of the street in order to exit. And it's becoming very, very dangerous. I myself have almost been hit in the morning trying to go to work. So I would really like the city would address this issue before someone does get hurt as soon as possible. If you need any more details about this, we've already sent pictures to the 311 line related to the cars that are parking on our street on a daily basis. Once again, my name is Yolanda Thomas. My number is 404-271-5554. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Angela Henderson. I am calling because the noise level from the cars has really got loud in Atlanta, and I think we need to consider a noise ordinance. I am at the corner of William Street and Ivan Allen, and this is where they are entering 75 or 85 or exiting 75 or 85 north and south. Also, we have, since Corona, we have children on the corner selling water, same place, Ivan Allen and William Street, and they are leaving like all of their trash there. For me, it's not so much the kids being there, it's the trash that's being left behind. So I don't know if we could maybe get more street cleaning. Also, the homeless population has kind of come to the same area. I don't know if that's because Centennial Olympic Park is closed. I don't know what's going on, but there's like someone homeless on like every corner now.
I've seen a homeless man throw like a can at this cab car van, and I've been living downtown for like 16 years. I've never seen anything like that. So the homeless is becoming more aggressive. Also, on West Peachtree Place Northwest, this is now a two-way street, and cars are parking on the side of the street of my building, which is 15 West Peachtree Place Northwest, and it is causing a blind spot for us when we get out, and also as people are making a right turn onto West Peachtree Street, there's a car parked at the corner where, of course, any car that's parked on West Peachtree Street going towards Centennial Olympic Park, they are actually parked in the driving lane because it's only one lane going in that direction. So the cars are actually parked in the driving lane, and it is really a hazard and a day. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to improvements.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Lawrence. I'm a resident of Centennial House, 115 West Peachtree Place, Northwest, Atlanta, Georgia, 30313. My council members, honorable council members, I'd like to leave a comment in reference to the homelessness. Since the Pine Street shelter, Pine and Peachtree Street shelter has closed, our area has been inundated with homelessness through the tunnel, which is an underpass of 285, 85 and William Street. Also, we've been having problems with noise, loud vehicles such as Challengers, Chargers, and any other fast sports cars come through here, only just revving their engines all hours of the night and day. And also our parking situation on our street, which is William Street, is atrocious. We have the yellow lines has been darkened, but there's not sufficient posted signs saying residents or people cannot park on the street. It need to be surveyed and corrected. But the situation pertaining to the homelessness, we have to address that. I don't know if we have adequate shelters in this area for those that were displaced after the closing of that Peachtree and Pine shelter, but now they are living literally all around our area. We are middle-class residents, and we deserve to have the freedom of being able to come and go without having homelessness on every corner of our area. We are adjacent to the Ernest and Young building, right at the William Street on and off ramp. Hope that the honorable Atlanta council members can address these issues, and we can find some sort of resolution to it. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Yes, this is Vivian Malcolm. I live right off of William Street in Centennial House. Also, wanted to know the noise ordinance. Is there a noise ordinance? We have these motorcycles or cars that are running up and down the road all night long, and I just didn't know if that's legal. The other question is, on the corner of William Street and Ivan Allen, some little kids that are selling water. It's okay, I don't mind, but they're trying to make money. But trash everywhere, and it looks very bad. And it's around the corner of our building. And the parking, it's on our street, on West Peachtree Place. People are parking, and there's fire hydrants, and it's just like no one's monitoring the street area on Peachtree Place. Thank you.
This is for the City Council. My name is Ted Pfeiffer, and I'm calling to support the passage of the Rayshard Brooks bill and for control of the Wendy's on University Avenue to be given back to the community so that it can be further developed into a peace center and a memorial site in Brooks' name. I also want to specifically call out what posers of this bill seem to be missing, which is that it will not affect any member of the APD's pay or pension. city wants. We need to seriously reimagine our ideas of what our police forces should look like. And this is a step in that direction. It's long overdue. Please pass this bill. Thank you. Hello, my name is Jason Carroll. I am a resident of Atlanta District 2, and I'm calling today to urge City Council to pass the Rashard Brooks bill, which would withhold funds from the Atlanta Police Department's budget until proper reforms can be enacted within its department. By doing so, the city will be able to come to the negotiating table on police reform with a more balanced bargaining power so that both parties can negotiate a real solution to the problems surrounding the way it conducts its policing within our communities. The proper restructuring of the Atlanta Police Department's budget with smarter community-based initiatives in mind will only benefit the citizens of Atlanta, and I believe this overall is long overdue, and I am confident that if this bill is passed, will allow a better, balanced discussion on how our government can better serve its people. Thank you. This is Jason Carroll, Atlanta District 2.
All right, and that concludes our public comment. Thank you to members of the public who reached out and shared your thoughts with us this afternoon. That takes us to the next segment of our agenda, which is communications. Ms. Bulladini.
Item number 1, 20C0053, a communication from Leona Barr Davenport, President and CEO of the Atlanta Business League, submitting the appointment of Ms. Sean Graham to serve on the Small Business Advisory Council. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
Ms. Graham, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon. If you would take just a couple moments and introduce yourself to us and why you'd like to serve in this position, that'd be great.
Okay, my name is Sean Graham. Currently the Chief Financial Officer with the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority. I'm a CPA. In addition to that, I am a board officer on the Atlanta Business League. My background has been mostly in accounting. In addition to that, I've done consulting work as an executive coach and business coach for small business owners. I've done accounting and finance for well over 30 years, and when the Atlanta Business League, we've had brief discussions around this appointment. I guess they thought that I'd be the best person to serve, considering my background.
Thank you very much for describing your background and for your willingness to serve. If there are no questions or comments, I will make a motion to approve.
Second,
Brown.
Smith.
We have a motion by Westmoreland and a second by Brown.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The vote is open.
Ms. Archibald? And Ms. Shepard. All right, we'll go ahead and close the vote. 6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is adopted. Thank you very much.
Our next item is number 2, 20C0054, a communication from Council President Felicia A. Moore, submitting the appointment of Ms. Shirley Langley to serve on the Small Business Advisory Council. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
Ms. Langley?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. If you would take a moment to introduce yourself to the committee and describe why you'd like to serve in this role, that'd be great.
Yes, my name again is Shirley Langley. I'm a CPA for over 25 years. I am self-employed and I am a small business owner as well. I'm formerly an auditor for the Internal Revenue Service, and my client base includes small, mid-sized, and some large companies. They include also service industry, contractors, restaurants, insurance agents, for-profit as well as not-for-profit entities. And I feel like my background would be sufficient in that I have access to a wide range of business types whereby I would be able to put their concerns forward as it relates to a financial standpoint.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your willingness to serve, and I will make a motion to approve.
Second, Brown.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. That item is adopted. Thank you very much, Ms. Langley.
Thank you.
Next up, colleagues, we will move to the presentation. We had a presentation scheduled for Eugene Jones, who is the new head of Atlanta Housing Authority. He will be here to present at a committee meeting in August, and so we are going to move into our second presentation from Invest Atlanta on their economic mobility plan. This is the third of 3 presentations that we have received from the team on their work, and looking forward to this one as well. Dr. Clemente, are you here?
Hello? Oh, yes, good afternoon. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yes, this is Dr. Eloisa Clemente with Invest Atlanta, and thank you, Council Member, for the introduction. So today, I want to thank you all for your time and attention to this very important work. Today, we're going to build off our last committee presentation and provide more context and detail on the metrics and the key performance indicators that will be the backbone of the Invest Atlanta Economic Development Mobility and Recovery Plan. While this discussion can skew on the technical side and get quite granular, we are really interested in hearing your reactions and your feedback to the key performance indicators. After all, these outcomes are what our residents will see and feel on the ground. Before diving in, you will recall the last session, we provided a high-level overview on our strategy, including how the COVID-19 crisis has affected this plan, our continued focus on economic mobility, a walkthrough of the plan's high-level objectives, a summary of the delivery tools available to Invest Atlanta and WorkSource Atlanta to make this plan a reality, and our framework for tracking and measuring impact. The key performance indicators discussion. Now, let's turn our attention to the matter at hand, which is our KPIs, or key performance indicators. As you are aware, these were developed based on feedback from an array of stakeholders, including residents, mayor's office, city council, committee, business leaders, and community groups such as the United Way, the Community Foundation, and many others. With the support of Bloomberg Associates, these key performance indicators incrementally increase throughout the 3-year plan, centering around the core pillars, which are creation of good jobs, access to good jobs, support of small businesses, investments in disinvested neighborhoods, and access to affordable housing. I'd now like to go through each pillar with all of you. Finally, I want to note that this is a living document. The numbers are based on the best information we have about the shape and the recovery of this recession. Hence, we will revisit the numbers on an annual basis and adjust as needed. Next slide. Creation of good jobs. Over the next 3 years, we are proposing to focus our business development efforts on attracting businesses which will create 15,750 direct jobs through all of Invest Atlanta. Of these, we will create 6,000 good and promising jobs. We are defining good jobs as those that will pay from $40,000 to $80,000 a year and provide employer-sponsored health insurance. And we are defining promising jobs as entry-level positions from which most workers can reach good jobs within 10 years. To be clear, this is an ambitious target. The COVID recession, as we know today, we believe, will reduce business investment. In fact, OECD, which is an international economic development organization, is forecasting a 30% drop in foreign direct investment. But we also believe that creating 6,000 good jobs over the next 3 years is achievable by revisiting our financial incentives and creating new scoring matrix that will prioritize businesses that offer jobs that do not require a college degree, jobs that offer proximity to local transit, jobs that invest in historically overlooked communities, such as the South and West Side, jobs that encourage the hiring of residents from those communities, as well as WorkSource Atlanta graduates, jobs that invest in career advancement training, jobs that benefits provided include things such as childcare. All of these factors were identified by stakeholders as barriers to greater economic mobility. In addition, the city budget, and I thank the council and this committee, has allocated $1.6 million for the Equitable Growth Grant Program, which will support the creation and attraction of high-quality middle-wage jobs. We will be coming back to this committee to talk about more of the details, but we imagine that the grant will be offered to companies and organizations creating substantial middle-wage opportunities with a significant proportion of middle-wage jobs, again, falling within that $40,000 and $80,000 range. We will, again, come back to council on the specifics, but we will suggest that the grant recipients will be required to meet a number of other criteria, such as recruiting unemployed, recruiting veterans and or ex-offenders, and hiring candidates who do not have a bachelor's degree. Grant recipients will also be required to submit annual reports setting up the jobs created and retained, wages and benefits, and capital investment. And there will be clawback provisions in the event that jobs are not created or retained within the 5-year compliance period. Again, more to come with this committee. Next slide, please. Access to good jobs. Of course, as we have said before, creating good jobs alone does not help us reach our mission of economic mobility. We must also help Atlantans get ready for and get placed into these good jobs. To this end, we are proposing to provide an array of workforce development services for up to 1,300 Atlanta residents through a variety of programming, including WorkSource Atlanta will provide services to 700 residents through its one-stop resource center. The center is a community resource available to anyone regardless of WIOA eligibility. It provides services such as resume writing assistance, job search, and career help are all available at no cost. Second, WorkSource Atlanta will also leverage WIOA adult and dislocated grant dollars to train 450 unemployed residents with the skills and credentials they need for good or promising jobs in high-demand industries. Third, further, WorkSource Atlanta will place 150 unemployed or recently displaced workers into paid work experiences and or employment and training opportunities. Fourth, WorkSource Atlanta will also support in-school and out-of-school youth to receive paid summer work experience and training in high-demand career fields. 75% of these youth will be from disinvested neighborhoods. And finally, depending on the availability of work sites, WorkSource Atlanta will provide students with soft skill training, career exploration, financial literacy, and other skills needed to sustain work. It is worth noting that currently there is no city money available for workforce development, as these initiatives are reliant entirely on federal funding, and with that comes strict rules on how the funds can be used. However, we do not plan on letting cumbersome federal processes weaken our resolve. There is an array of WorkSource service providers in Atlanta, including Goodwill, the AARP Foundation, Atlanta Technical College, Atlanta Public Schools, Georgia Vocational Rehab, Jobs Corps, and many others. We will work with them by providing insights into where the promising and good jobs are, the skills that are in high demand, and help these organizations augment their service offerings and referral processes. We are also going to work very hard in getting our large employers and the foundation to augment our efforts of job access and training programs. As I have said before, this recession will require a collective response to support the economic mobility efforts we are all focused on delivering. Next slide, please. Support for small businesses. Small businesses have always been a critical part of our economy and for local job creation, as we see this pathway one of wealth creation. Unfortunately, these are also going to be some of the hardest hit by the devastating effects of the pandemic. Our goal is to support 900 small businesses, not only so that they can survive, but so that they can grow and take on more employees. Again, this is an ambitious target, but considering the vulnerability of businesses in the face of the recession, it is our duty to increase support, not just through loans, but through our mentorship, technical assistance, and increased access to local buyers. Specifically, we will ensure that 70% of Invest Atlanta support goes to minority and women-owned businesses, and that 50% of our support targets micro businesses. That means 10 employees or less, which are more likely to run out of working capital, more likely to be Black-owned. We will also help 225 small businesses which are at risk of closing to become financially stable. This means helping them grow their revenue, their profit margins, flatten expenses, expand their customer base, and have cash on hand for the unexpected. We are particularly excited over an initiative to create an accessible fashion and art district in the South Side. This district will support artists, creatives, and designers from the community by offering retail space to sell their goods and an incubator where they can work and receive entrepreneurial support and technical assistance. Ideally, we look to locate the district in a walkable, accessible area near the Beltline in order to maximize foot traffic and bring cultural aspects of the South Side to the Beltline. Possible locations include the Avon District or Fort McPherson, Lee and White, Murphy's Crossing. We will also seek to create partnership for the district with the Atlanta-based companies like NCR and Comcast. Finally, to support our small business efforts, we hope to create a new small business support hub in the South Side. We have listened to this council and we have heard you, and are being very purposeful in bringing our services closer to those that we are trying to support. This hub will bring together different entrepreneurship and small business service providers, such as the Small Business Administration, the SBA, the Atlanta SCORE, Urban League Entrepreneurship Center, the Small Business Development Center, and local chambers, along with Invest Atlanta staff, to provide a range of services for new and existing Southside businesses. Programming will include workshops, mentorship, co-working space, shared professional services, and access to capital, and much more. Next slide, please. Investment in disinvestment neighborhoods. Of course, we have to do more than provide services to neighborhoods in the South Side and West Side. We have to attract investment there. Although there are limitations to what we can do to make neighborhoods more livable, for example, we have very little influence over the public realm or parks, the public safety and transit and infrastructure, but we are determined to play our part. As data has shown, Atlanta's extreme segregation patterns make zip codes a consistent indicator of social and economic disparity. To support the most disinvested neighborhoods in Atlanta, we are proposing 2 key performance indicators. 1, attracting significant investment from the National Community Development Finance Institutions, or CDFI. And 2, attracting or supporting at least 15 healthy food options. Community Development Financial Institutions, also known as CDFIs, are private sector financial intermediaries whose primary mission is community development. While Atlanta has several CDFIs, the Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, Community Housing Capital, Enterprise, the Center for Financial Independence, and LIFT, we have yet to attract significant investment from large national CDFIs, like the One United Bank or South Health Credit Union or Capital Impact Partners. These national CDFIs are a potential source of much-needed investment capital we have not tapped into previously. We are going to change this by identifying and packaging investment opportunities and doing intentional outreach. For example, Netflix just announced on June 30th that the company will allocate 2% of its cash holdings initially up to $100 million to financial institutions and organizations that directly support Black communities in the U.S. As a part of its commitment to racial equity, Netflix will begin by redirecting $35 million of its cash to members of the Local Initiative Support Corporation, that's the list. We are also going to pursue other funding opportunities. For example, we are currently applying for the Property Assessed Clean Energy or PACE funding. This will help Atlanta property owners to pay for upgrades to their properties to increase energy efficiency, harness renewable energy, conserve water, and protect against storms. As for the second key performance indicator, we are focusing on healthy food options because the data shows that 1 in 4 Atlantans live in neighborhoods defined as food deserts, or areas with limited geographic access to fresh meat and fresh produce. We want to address this by both attracting supermarkets to the neighborhoods and changing offerings in existing local food stores. We will continue to seek to attract national and regional supermarket chains, but we are also working with partners in the Southside to increase the stock and promotion of healthy foods in the corner and store bodegas. Next slide, please. Access to affordable housing. Finally, our last set of key performance indicators relate to the affordable housing and supporting low-income families to assess this housing. As I noted last time, these key performance indicators are drawn from the city's Housing Action Plan. In particular, we will help 450 low-income households to purchase homes, incentivize 1,250 affordable residential units to be built no transit, activate blighted, vacant, and underutilized properties and rehabilitate commercial corridors, and finally support 2,475 households so that they are no longer cost burdened by having to pay more than 30% of their income on rent. Next slide. In summary, it is important to note that these key performance indicators do not cover all that we do. We will also continue to work with organizations like the APS, MARTA, which have direct influence over the economic mobility pathways, and we will continue to weigh in and try to influence important policies like Opportunity Zones. Nevertheless, over the next 3 years, we expect Invest Atlanta activities will create and support 15,750 direct jobs. As this committee has recognized, we are shifting our attention away from the low-hanging fruit to focus on investments in disinvested neighborhoods, which will benefit our low-income households. And this is hard work, and it takes time. So we believe that our metrics are both ambitious and stretching, particularly during a recession. Of course, accountability and transparency are concerns of the Mayor's Office and the Council of Invest Atlanta. So we intend to provide quarterly reports on our progress and indicators on our work. In this way, council members, funders, and partners can check our progress and give input into the ways we are working. Finally, before I take questions and any feedback this council may have, I wanted to touch base on the process for the plan's adoption and implementation. Next month, we will bring this plan to the full council, and then to the Invest Atlanta board. The mayor will then launch the plan to the residents and key stakeholders. Additionally, we will begin to engage each council member on WorkSource Atlanta. We will not rush this process. When ready, we will move to seek the WorkSource Atlanta integration into Invest Atlanta and adoption of the IGA. We can then integrate the business, community, and workforce terms as required to deliver this plan. Finally, we will produce our first implementation report by the end of the year. Again, thank you, council members, for your time and consideration. And I was just wanting to see if there were any questions that any of the members had.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Klimetich, and for all the work that you and your various teammates have done to get us to this point. Very excited about where we are and about adoption next month, and then moving on to the passage of a longer-term IGA. Any questions or comments from colleagues? I don't see anybody signed up yet, but if someone has a question, go ahead and feel free to ask it or press your speaker button, and we will take you in the order that you sign up. And we are going to start with Ms. Shepard.
Thank you, because I can't see, my button's not working right. All right. Dr. Klimetich, my concern is how we're going to roll this out in terms of, I'm still trying to understand this. This is good, this is strategy completion, but how do we actually roll this out? I want to know about your capacity, the folks that you're going to be interacting with at your office to roll this out. How is this going to happen? I mean, it's great in terms of the presentation, but how will we actually roll this out?
Yes, thank you, council member. So once we get through all the approvals and make sure that all of both the City Council and the Invest Atlanta Board and everybody's ready to move forward, we will begin by outreach to all of our neighborhoods so that everybody can clearly see what some of the metrics and goals are. We will begin to outreach to our businesses as well, so they also are very informed, and then we'll just get to work. The plan is very specific. What you have before you is overarching the KPIs, the key performance indicators, but we have a roadmap on in the strategy that details exactly the actions that we need to take to ensure the implementation in each of these. But to your direct question, I would say the first step is to ensure that the public knows, community knows about the direction we're taking, and then provide them the access to the information so they can follow on and provide input and work with us to achieve the results.
Well, I think what you're saying is very important. I would love to look at your plan in terms of a rollout because I think it's key. My community is a community, and my district is a district that is actually economically moving pretty fast. So we have a lot of things that are going on at one time, but some of them, as you know, coming through your department, the community has not been happy with some of the processes at this point. But I want to make sure that if we take our moment to business, that we're doing it in a way that not only are we vetting in the community, but we're actually reaching out to folks in the community. So I think it has to be a very intimate, comprehensive plan in terms of rollout, and one that community people also can get and know that they have accessibility to some of these projects and things that we're doing. So I am very concerned about that and the capacity to do that. So I'd love to have more conversation about that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember, we'll reach out.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? I will ask one that kind of builds on the capacity conversation that Councilmember Shepard asked about. Most, if not all of us, know that for the last couple of years, the city's made a $3 million contribution to the Invest Atlanta budget out of general fund, and that through other various sources, your overall budget gets up to $11 or so million. Can you talk a little bit about, as we prepare to do much more than we are currently doing, which I am wholeheartedly in support of, what, if any, additional resources may need to be required such that you can reach the goals that you've outlined in this presentation?
Yeah, Well, we understand that the city right now and the economy is in very difficult times. We expect there to be, if we're not already in, a recession as a result of COVID. So we are really drawing this plan with that in mind and being very conscious of the environment and the difficult decisions that both the city council and the mayor's office have to make. So with that in mind, I do have, one of the things that I said at the beginning was that we really see this plan as a living document, council members. So as we see the situation in the city improve, we will come be very aggressive about, one, revisiting some of these goals and metrics, and then what resources we will need to ensure that we reach those goals. So again, understand it's an iterative process. I'm working very closely with you and the entire council to be sensitive of all of the demands you have, but being very aggressive because we are very clear on this being an economic mobility and who we are trying to address and how we are trying to provide services to the most vulnerable. So I can tell you that we are working on numbers, and as we can, we will come back to you.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. There are no other questions or comments from the body. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Pouladini, that takes us to our consent agenda and ordinances for first reading.
Item number 3, 20-1501, CDP-20-024, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to adopt Atlanta Beltline Sub-Area 9 and 10 Master Plans, the Atlanta Beltline Sub-Area 9 and 10 Master Plan Update, to amend the 2016 Comprehensive Development Plan by incorporating by reference said plans and for other purposes NPUs G, J, K, L, and T, Council Districts 3 and 9. Item number 4, 20-1502, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to transfer an amount not to exceed $350,000.00 to and from the General Government Capital Outlay Fund impact fees to the Zone 3 Police Precinct for the purpose of purchasing materials and supplies to outfit the building and for other purposes. Item number 5, 20-0-1503, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee or the chief procurement officer or his designee on behalf of the city of Atlanta to acquire from the Conservation Fund approximately 0.99 acres of real property located at 640 Hutchins Road, Southeast Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County Tax Parcel ID listed in City Council District 12 for development as a park at a purchase price not to exceed $83,818.07, authorizing the mayor or her designee or the chief procurement officer or his designee on behalf of the city to execute all documents necessary to acquire the property, authorizing acquisition, due diligence, closing costs, signage, demolition, site stabilization, and other site development costs to be paid from the Park Impact Fees South account in an amount not to exceed $83,818.07, as indicated in the account listed below, amending the 2020 General Government Capital Outlay Fund budgets in the Department of Parks and Recreation and Finance Parks South Service District by transferring to and from various accounts listed, waiving Section 2-1541D of the Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City Code of Ordinances, Article 10, and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the regular agenda, I do want to acknowledge Council President Felicia Moore, who joined us some time ago and is here on the call for our meeting. That takes us to ordinances for second reading, number 6.
Item number 6, 20-01468, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to waive provisions of Part 3, Code of Ordinances, Land Development Code, Part 16, Zoning, Chapter 29, Definition, Section 16-29.00173, supportive housing of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for the purpose of waiving the distance requirements for development located at 424 Decatur Street, San Bertha 30312, known as Macaulay Park, and a development at 251 Anderson Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia, 30314, known as the Mallory, and for other purposes. There is a substitute in your packet which adds an additional property, which is located at 340 Hill Circle, known as Dwell at Alcove, to the list of exempted properties.
I will make a motion to bring forward the substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. Will everyone please vote?
7 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before us. If there are any questions for members of the administration, they are here to answer those. If not, I will entertain a motion. Okay, maybe I will make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Westmoreland and a second by Faruqi.
Vote is open. Will everyone please vote? Vote is closed.
My computer froze, but I will assume that vote was 7 yeas, 0 nays, and that item is adopted on substitute. Will you go to the next item, Ms. Pouliot?
Yes, item number 7, 20-0-1481, an ordinance by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet amending the FY21 CARES Act 2020 fund budget, Department of the Executive Offices, by adding to anticipations and appropriations in the amount of $8 million and 0 cents for COVID-19 testing and tracing, and authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Fulton County Board of Health to administer certain public health services and for other purposes. There's a substitute in your packet which removes the anticipations and appropriations language, updates the amount to $7.7 million, and adds the funding string for payment to be paid to the Fulton County Board of Health.
I will make a motion to bring forward the substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith. Please open that vote.
Vote is open.
Could you record the vote when it is concluded?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The vote is 7 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is now before you, and if you wouldn't mind me reading in the caption since it has changed. An ordinance by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee, authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Fulton County Board of Health to administer certain public health services in an amount not to exceed $7,700,000 and 0 cents and for other purposes.
Move approval, Smith.
Second, Brown.
Motion by Smith, second by Brown.
Vote is open.
He will record me as yes and then call the vote. That would be great.
Yes, Mr. Chair, one moment. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on substitute. Our next item is number 8, 20-0-1484, an ordinance by Councilmember Joyce M. Shepherd to ratify Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom's executive order calling on the Atlanta Housing Authority, Atlanta Beltline, Inc., Fulton County, City of Atlanta Land Bank Authority, Invest Atlanta, Partners for Home, and the City of Atlanta's Department of Grants and Community Development to institute a temporary moratorium on residential evictions and filings, to declare that this moratorium shall remain in effect for a period of 60 days and for other purposes.
Move approval.
The motion by Shepherd, second by Brown. Please open that vote.
Vote is open. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 9, 20-0-1488, an ordinance by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet, authorizing the mayor or her designee on behalf of the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency to accept a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Dislocated Worker National Emergency Grant in the amount of $550,000.00 from the Technical College System of Georgia Office of Workforce Development to provide workforce services to dislocated workers who became separated from their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic and for other purposes. There's a substitute in your packet which modifies details of the grant, adds the funding string, and attaches Exhibit A, which is the statement of grant award.
I'll make a motion to bring forward the substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown.
One moment, please. Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is now before you, and if I may read in the caption. An ordinance by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee, amending the fiscal year 2021 Job Training Grant Fund budget, Atlanta Workforce Development Agency, by adding to anticipations and appropriations in the amount of $550,000.00 for disaster relief employment activities through March 31, 2022, from the Technical College System of Georgia and for other purposes.
Any questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
So a motion by Brown, which I will second.
One moment, please. Vote is open. Will everyone please vote?
You will go ahead and record me as an aye as well.
Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on substitute.
Thank you.
Our next item. Number 10, 20-R-4120, a resolution by Councilmember Antonio Brown supporting a study to be conducted by the People's Uprising Task Force examining opportunities to expand the City of Atlanta's workforce through the development of a comprehensive workforce development program to identify and create middle-wage jobs for residents in underserved low-income communities and for other purposes.
Mr. Brown.
Yep. So, colleagues, I put forth this resolution to have a study conducted by an independent body that was created to evaluate how we can address systemic oppression in the City of Atlanta. And through this work, this task force is going to conduct a study on a potential workforce development bond that can focus on creating jobs in low-income Black and brown communities, and be able to present that study back before CDHS and council as a whole as a basis of reference of how we could potentially move forward with addressing this matter. I'm here to answer any questions, and Councilmember Westmoreland, I'll motion to approve. Second, Farouk.
We have a motion to approve by Brown and a second by Farouki, and a question or comment from Councilmember Shepherd.
Well, we just had a presentation from Invest Atlanta addressing some of these same concerns. And I questioned why we need to do it again. And I don't know who the people on the uprising that's conducted by the People Uprising Task Force. Who is the People Uprising Task Force? I'm not sure who they are. So can you give me a little bit more information? I believe that the study we just did, if we roll it out with Invest Atlanta, do we need to have two?
So, Councilmember Shepherd, this study is different than the work that Invest Atlanta is doing. This study is focusing specifically on a workforce development bond, as opposed to just the efforts that Invest Atlanta is doing in the work around creating opportunities within these communities. So the work is different, and I also sent out to Julia, and she sent an email out to council members that shows you a deck of who the advisory board members are, who the board members are on the People's Uprising Task Force for your review. So it's in your email. If you click on it, it'll show you everyone that's been identified.
And who the Workforce Development Bond, who will be issuing that bond?
Well, that's the whole purpose of the study, council member, is to explore what that could potentially look like. And, what it would take, I didn't want to make the decision, I wanted an independent body to explore what that could potentially consist of, and then be able to bring it back before this body and council. So this is just an independent study on what it would look like to move something of this magnitude forward. And just so you know, Councilmember Shepherd, it's a total of about 70 members, in which consist of, community leaders, organizers, philanthropists, influencers, protesters. It's a huge body of people.
Well, Mr. Brown, I don't think I'm going to be able to support this at this point. Where you are going with your position is entirely different than me, and I believe that we should be working cohesively together. So I won't be able to support this. I think we need to
no problem, council member.
I think we need to maybe hold this, and you need to bring us forth more information. So I would like to put forth a position to hold.
But, council member, if you don't mind, I'm not understanding what more information you need. You have a piece of legislation that fully lays out what the study is consisting of. You've had this paper for 2 weeks, and you also have a deck of who the task force consists of. So I'm trying to understand what your basis is.
What do you want the council to do with this? When it comes back, what is our position as a city? What are we supposed to do with this then?
It's just to review the study, to look at the study and examine what was determined through. All this is a study, council member. This is a study like we would do any other study within the city of Atlanta. It's a study to examine what it would take to establish a workforce development bond to create jobs in low-income Black and brown communities. That's it. It's the same study if we were to do it anywhere else. It's just being done by an independent body outside of council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm having a lot of problems with how you interact and work in the community, so I won't be able to support this today. So I'll just I'm holding it, but I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, council member.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I was asking if there are any more questions or comments, and now I see that there is a question or comment from Councilmember Archibald. Councilmember Archibald, are you there?
Okay, now the line is unmuted. Yeah, I was asking if Councilmember Shepherd was making a substitute motion to hold or not. I'm a little bit confused procedurally where we are. That's all.
No, I'm not doing a substitute.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve on the floor, it's been seconded, and now we've got Councilmember Smith.
Okay, Councilmember Brown, is this your People's Uprising? Is that the one that we got the email that has a whole bunch of different people on it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is this going to cost any money?
No, ma'am.
And is Workforce Development, are they on board with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all my questions.
I'll ask a follow-up. What is Workforce Development on board with it mean? What have those conversations looked like, and with whom?
So this task force, initially, Katarina Taylor was a part of this task force with what we were doing around the work for the People's Uprising Task Force. And we've had conversations going back and forth about the work of the task force and what we were seeking to accomplish. And, you know, this has been not just a conversation with her, but this has been just an overall conversation with stakeholders within Atlanta that have all contributed to the workforce development conversation as a whole. So if you look at the task force, I mean, it's 70 members in which are all influential within the work that is happening within the city, but also in different sectors within the city.
So you have had a conversation with the head of Workforce Atlanta, who is both a member of this task force and has expressed support for it to you?
I have had a conversation with Katarina Taylor, who was a member of the task force originally. She's now not on the task force, just at, you know, for other reasons, not pertaining to the work of the task force, but just other reasons with, you know, within her current obligations. But yes, she was in full support of the work that we were doing through this task force. Absolutely.
I don't know if there's any way to get her to be a part of this conversation. I'm not sure she called in today since she's not presenting.
Can we call her?
Well, I was going to ask Ms. Poulier, we might be able to work on that. Ms. Smith, you have the floor still, and then Ms. Shepard is after you whenever you want to relinquish it.
Okay, well, let's just, let's call on the Miss Workforce Development. I'm having trouble with people's last names the last couple of days. Is Katarina around?
I don't know, and I also don't want to hold up the conversation. We may need to come back to this to see if she's able to speak. Ms. Smith, would you relinquish the floor to see what questions or comments Ms. Shepard has?
I'm pressing my end comment button right now. I might come back, but if they could find Ms. Workforce, that would be great.
Okay. Ms. Shepard.
How are we vetting these people? The people we're talking about, the 70 people, how have we, 70 people is a lot of people. I'm just trying to figure out how do we even vet these people? And have they been approved already? What's the process of vetting them?
I'm confused, Councilmember Shepard. What do you mean by vetting the people?
Is this task force a task force that's going to go through the council for approval?
No, this task force has already stood up and formed.
Okay, so it's an independent task force, so we don't have to...
Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. So this is an independent body. It's a task force. It's a non-political, non-partisan task force. No, there are no elected officials in the committees that will be performing the work of the task force. And the individuals that are on the committees are already individuals that are doing work within the city of Atlanta as a whole, focusing on different areas within the task force. So there's economics, public administration, communications, entertainment and culture, and civic engagement. And the work within these committees are focused around a variety of issues that have contributed to the systemic oppression of Black and brown communities in the city of Atlanta, but also in the state of Georgia. This work, the reason why this study is so important is because we're also working with the governor's office. So this study would not just be brought before city council with our findings, but it would also be brought before the governor's office as well, who's in support of the task force and the findings of the task force. So this workforce development study is simply to explore what it would take to establish a workforce development bond from an independent body outside of the city, because we wanted to make sure that the work that was done, the findings that were done, were not impeded by political or personal interests, that the findings were completely independent by the people and for the people that it would potentially impact.
Well, typically, I don't know all the people on the task force. Typically, when we go to the city, we have to look to see if the recommendation is there's a conflict of interest in terms of who they are, what they do, and all of that. So you create this task force, but is there any way that that's who's on the task force to look at, who they are and the whole process in terms of what they represent? How do we do that? How do we know? So we're basically supposed to pretty much accept that this is your independent task force and that you will present a finding to the community back to council.
Yes, ma'am. So this is an independent body that is operating in a multitude of capacities. I mean, if you look at the task force members, again, Julia sent out an email with a deck that breaks down who the task force members are. I mean, it's made up of young leaders in the city. It's made up of small business owners. It's made up of community leaders and stakeholders. I mean, it's a wide variety of people. And instead of us operating in silos, what this task force does is bring together all of these independent entities, and everyone is working towards, working together to move towards solutions that can be brought before the city and the state. So this is a collaborative effort to bring everyone together. And Councilmember, the deck that I sent you, I think you know quite a few of the people that are listed on the deck. The Young Atlanta Leaders, which is affiliated with the task force, is made up of over 25 young people in the city that, are already working in a wide variety of spaces. So I thought this was important. I thought this resolution was important because it gives an opportunity for this independent body to be a part of the conversation and the work outside of any political interests or anything of that nature, to allow this group to be able to work to find solutions that are going to impact the very communities in which they operate in every day.
Well, if this is an independent task force, you want still to come before the council, but so it's just a recommendation. Where's this report? Why would you just not come and do your study and bring it to us and ask us to accept it? And why would you support it on the front end?
I was only asking for this. I was only asking for council's support of this resolution because I wanted to solidify the efforts of the work that the task force would be tasked for doing. Like, I didn't want to just say, hey, task force, we're exploring this idea of a potential workforce development bond without the support of council in the exploration of them performing this work. Some of the resistance was, basically, are we going to be doing this work and council not take this work seriously or take the work that we're doing in consideration in what we are bringing before them? So I thought it was necessary that we put forth the resolution so that the work that this body would be doing would not be in vain. We already know we have the support of the governor's office, but to also have the support of city council to say that, hey, we're interested to see what you come up with through this study and through this finding to see how we could potentially implement it into the work that we're doing as a body a body of legislators, I thought it just further signified and gave the People's Uprising Task Force, a reason to do this work.
Well, I would like to do a substitute motion to hold. There's just too many questions for me that I'm not sure of. I don't know if the law department can opine in on this, and from an ethics perspective of us as a city supporting a resolution that we're not sure who's on the committee, if they have conflicts of interest, who's funding it, who in the governor's office are you talking to, Mr. Brown?
Nick Buford, who's the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the governor's office. I've also spoken with Governor Kemp himself. So,
can Governor Kemp send us a letter saying he supports this? Can you send us a memo saying he supports this?
Sure, absolutely. I will speak with Nick Buford to do that, and if you all want to hold the legislation while we do that, I have no problem doing that as well. And I will second your motion, Council Member.
Thank you.
So we've got a substitute motion to hold, a second from Mr. Brown. Ms. Taylor, Katerina from Workforce Atlanta is on the line. Ms. Taylor, I don't know if you had any comments that you wanted to share. It sounds like we're going to hold this legislation, and so you may come back in a cycle and talk more about it, but if you have any thoughts you want to share right now, you're welcome to.
Sure. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So I was made aware of the People's Uprising Committee. I did think it was a city mandate program or committee. So I was asked to be on that committee. I did also decline the offer just as a capacity issue. Really trying to focus on workforce. So I am not on that committee, and I think Councilmember Brown has made that clear. The second thing is I was not aware of this study until this afternoon. His department or his team staff did reach out to me to provide some information. I've not had a chance to read that information, but I did receive it, so I can't say that I support it or not support it. I don't know enough information about it. So I want to make that clear. I have not had a chance to read it, nor has anyone on my team had a chance to read it yet. The team did send it over. I just haven't had a chance to read it.
Much appreciated. Ms. Shepherd, are you done speaking, or are you still on line?
I'm finished.
Okay. All right. Got a motion to hold by Shepherd, a second by Brown. Please open that vote.
One moment, please. Vote is open.
I'm bumped off. This is Archie Bond. I need a voice vote.
How would you like to make your voice vote?
Yes, I support holding it.
Okay.
What's wrong with this darn
All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays. That item is held. Next item.
Item number 11. 20R-4125, a resolution by Community Development and Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee on behalf of the Department of Transportation to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the West Side Howell Mill Community Improvement District doing business as Upper West Side CID for the purpose of granting a permit to the CID, its employees, contractors, and representatives, collectively CID representatives, to have certain rights to the property described herein for the purpose of preserving, restoring, developing, enhancing, rehabilitating, operating, and maintaining the property as a pocket park for the general public to use and for the purpose of that.
Cotina Alexander,
Alexander, go ahead.
Okay, so some of this legislation is to allow the CIDs access to land to build a pocket park.
we have been in constant contact with them and have worked with the law department, our law department, and their legal department to develop the MOU, and are okay with moving the legislation forward.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, I will make a motion to approve.
Second, Brown.
Vote is open. Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is tabled.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Item number 12, 20-R-4126, a resolution by Community Development Human Services Committee to amend Resolution 20-R-3933 to designate account numbers from which all work contracted in accordance therewith would be charged to and paid from for the service agreement with the Atlanta Beltline, Inc. as authorized under 20-R-3933 for the purpose of providing the maintenance, design, construction, renovation, and repair by the Atlanta Beltline, Inc. of certain parks and green spaces where park property is procured, leased, and are managed by the city that are located at least in part within the Beltline TAD in an amount not to exceed $75,000.00 and for other purposes.
Move approval, Smith.
Got a motion to approve by Smith, which I will second. Any questions or comments? If not, please go ahead and open the vote.
One moment, please. Vote is open. Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is takeable. Our next item is number 13, 20-R-4173, a resolution by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone authorizing the mayor on behalf of the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency, aka Workforce Atlanta, to amend FC-9895 One-Stop Career Center Operator with In the Door LLC to expand the scope of work and include navigator, staff accountant, and accounting specialist positions, and for the purposes, there is a substitute in your packet which attaches Exhibit A and updates Exhibit B.
I will make a motion to bring forward the substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith.
One moment, please. Vote is open. Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays.
0 nays. The substitute is before us. Any questions or comments? Ms. Taylor, are you still on the line? Okay. It doesn't appear that she
Yes,
is
I'm
with
still
me.
here.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Ms. Smith, do you have a question?
I just wanted to make sure that she was going to speak on this.
Okay.
Ms. Taylor, are you going to speak on it?
Yes, so we are just updating the contract that we did before. It's actually a little less than we were providing earlier in the year when we came to you all to get this contract approved. We're adding another position because we are addressing, we're trying to address more equity opportunities within workforce and within Workforce Atlanta. So we're moving to a more regional approach so that our residents who may be going to other facilities will still get the same service, but they'll still be using Workforce Atlanta, but they won't be turned away. And also, again, using the equity lens to make sure that every process that happens for them to come to the agency to get support, get WIOA dollars, or removing as many barriers as possible. So in order to do that, we have to hire an additional person under this contract, and so we wanted to make sure that we have the funds available to do that.
Move approval, Smith.
Motion by Smith. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Second by Brown.
Vote is open. Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on substitute. Our next item is number 14, 20-R-4174, a resolution by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone, authorizing the mayor on behalf of the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency to amend and renew Cooperative Agreement FC-1190582, Cooperative Agreement for Workforce Service Delivery providing adult dislocated worker and youth services with Arbor E&T LLC doing business as ResCare Workforce Services in an amount not to exceed $2,050,000.00. All of the services to be charged to and paid from accounts listed herein and for other purposes.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, the department has requested that this paper be filed.
In that instance, I will make that motion.
Second, Smith.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Smith.
One moment, please. Vote is open. Vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item has been filed. There are 2 held items.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Our first held item is number 26, 20-0-1337, an ordinance by Councilmembers J.P. Massacott and Dustin Hillis, as substituted to by Community Development Human Services Committee, amending City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Section 158-66, subsection D2D, to specify the use of funding from the Food Trust Fund for maintenance costs related to procured forested land as authorized by subsection 158-66B under Code Section 158-66 Tree Trust Fund and for other purposes.
I don't know if Mr. Massacott or Mr. Hillis are on the line. I know that Mr. Massacott came and spoke to us at our last meeting about the initial draft that he had written and then changes to it since then, and had indicated a desire to move forward on this. Are there any comments, I guess, before we entertain a motion? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, Mike Ward from the Department of Law would like to speak to this item.
Okay. Mr. Ward, go for it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is Mike Ward from the Law Department. It was another item I was raising my hand for. My apologies.
Okay, Ms. Archibald.
Remind me what Councilmember Massacott said at the last meeting, please. If someone could.
Yep, sorry, I was muted and now I am unmuted. It spoke to we went through the Lake Charlotte process last time, and Councilmember Massacott introduced a paper a couple of cycles ago that would have capped the number of, or the percent that could be spent on the maintenance costs, and then the number of years. And after consulting with a number of different entities, Park Pride, the Trust for Public Land, Trees Atlanta, our own Office of Planning, and Department of Parks and Recreation, they pulled out the percentage, not wanting to have any unintended consequences, and instead have stated that any period of maintenance would be for up to 2 years, and then it lists a number of uses that are appropriate and inappropriate as it relates to maintenance. Yep.
I can't quite hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of static as well. Can you hear me?
If you all could please pause for one moment, we will correct that interference. Just one moment, please.
Line unmuted. Line muted.
All right, so I think that's gone now. Councilmember Archibald, I was saying that Councilmember Matsguide and Hillis had introduced a paper a couple cycles ago that would have capped the amount of money that could have been spent out of the tree trust fund for maintenance purposes at 20%, and for just the first 2 years, and then it listed a bunch of uses for maintenance that were both appropriate and inappropriate. And then we came back with a substitute last cycle that removed the 20%, so it just deals with initial short-term maintenance for the first 2 years, and then it lists all of the uses that are appropriate for maintenance, but kind of disqualifies roads, parking lots, trails, buildings, or other similar infrastructure on the property. So it makes it clear that the money should be used to maintain trees or take care of invasive species, but doesn't provide a percentage cap as it originally had intended to, but does lay out a 2-year kind of limit, and then an additional source of funding would need to be found after that.
Okay, that's helpful. I was really, and you said the entities that have given feedback on the paper, and they're the ones that I would think should inform our decision. So this paper as it is now in its current form, the tree commission, the departments have all said great over it and they're fine with it. Is that what you're saying?
That is my understanding, yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd.
So I'm sorry, did the administration, anybody from the administration here can weigh in on this? Was there somebody speaking earlier to this?
No one from the administration has spoken yet. I will use this as an opportunity to ask anyone who feels best suited to do so to go ahead and say your name, and I will hand the mic over to you. It's my understanding that...
Mr. Chair, this is Charlotta Jackson. I have Justin Jordan from the mayor's office is also on the line and is familiar with the operation of the tree trust fund from the perspective of the Parks Department.
Okay, that'd be great.
Mr. Jordan. Justin Johnson. Justin.
I don't believe he is on the call, so there may be a way to leave him in. I know that Councilmember Matsguide has talked with folks from the Parks Department. I don't know if anyone from Parks is on the line.
So if we can follow back up, let me try to get Mr. Johnson on the phone as well as Ms. Burke.
Okay, Ms. Shepherd,
So
would you like to...
Yeah, well, while we waiting, let me make a couple more little comments. So
Okay.
my thoughts on this is, in certain parts of our communities, we are excellent in terms of having people who can augment costs for things that may not happen in a poor side of the community. CIDs, all different nonprofits. We know on the north side of Atlanta, we have a huge amount of folks who give donations. I'm blessed that when I first got in office, Arthur Blank Foundation gave a donation to a park right behind my house that helped us because we wouldn't have had the money to actually do it ourselves in our community because my community is pretty much just a moderate to low income community. So as we're talking about this, I just want to be sure, because actually in case in point is Lake Charlotte. Lake Charlotte, I'm happy that we did it. I fought for it. Lake Charlotte is probably one of the biggest forest areas that we've acquired, and I'm very proud of that, my district, but it was a fight. So I know, the prerequisite fund and what it's used for, but I just really have concerns about the fact that, we will put these particular things on, and I know the papers will be as a result of the Lake Charlotte issue. So I do have concerns about that and just question that, because I'm not sure in my side of the city if I will be able to actually get things done unless something tremendously changed where I can go out and find money. Sometimes it's easier to find money on one side of the city than it is the other. I just want y'all to understand that.
Mr. Chair, I understand that Ms. Burks is on the phone. This is Ms. Jack.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm muted again. Thank you, Ms. Shepard. Points well made. Ms. Burke is on the phone. Ms. Archibong, you have the floor, and if you'd like to ask a question of Ms. Burke, feel free to do so, and if you just want to make a comment, we can go to her afterwards.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment and then like to hear what Ms. Burke says, but I think that the issue is the tree trust fund and how much of it do we want to earmark for certain buckets, and I do think the parameters that are being set in this paper are important for us to go ahead and support. We may change it, and there may be on a case-by-case basis a need to do something differently based upon the circumstances, but I do think we need to be mindful that how we spend these dollars are really important. It's not a unlimited source of money, and we've got a big city and a lot of needs. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Butler-Burks, would you like to make any comment before we take action?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the CDHS committee for the opportunity to speak to this one. We have been in conversation with Councilmember McIntyre on this particular issue, and we certainly agree with the comments that have been said. We do take this fund extremely seriously. We know it's not an unlimited fund, but we just want to point out that in the event we pursue a property, purchase it with this particular fund, and if there's any funding for maintenance beyond the 2 years, we will have to look at what that means to our general fund budget after those particular 2 years. So again, we do support it. We understand the reason for it, but just knowing that as council members bring various opportunities to us, anything beyond those 2 years of maintenance require us to look at the general fund and see if we can make it.
I appreciate that. A quick follow-up from me. When we talked about Lake Charlotte last couple cycles ago, the size of the property, but also the considerable kind of maintenance needs, I think made it, this was the first piece of forested land that we purchased with dollars from the Tree Trust Fund, and I was proud to support the acquisition and the maintenance because I feel like the team made a compelling case that the length of time, which in that instance was 5 years, was needed based on the amount of evasiveness, I guess for lack of a better phrase, and the size of the property. Was going to take several years to get it into a really good spot, and then at the end of that 5 years, we will have to look to the general fund for maintenance dollars. It was my understanding during that conversation that our staff, in concert with people from the Conservation Fund, Trust for Public Land, felt that Lake Charlotte was kind of like the whatever metaphor you want to use, was a really unique, special piece of property, and there literally wasn't anything else like it in the city, and that as we made additional purchases moving forward, the maintenance needs were going to be less substantial and potentially in line with this 2 years. And so I had some concern about the 20% cap. While it existed, it's gone away now, and so we're just talking about saying, all right, these funds can be used for 2 years, and then in the third year we need to identify another source. Is it your sense that as you look at other potential acquisition pieces, that each of them are less in need based on size and evasiveness than Lake Charlotte, and that 2 years would get us off the ground, and then we would have to find general fund dollars, but it would be nothing as substantial as Lake Charlotte in the future?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. Lake Charlotte was a very unique piece of property that we were able to purchase just based on the number of acres. When you talk about that many acres, I can say each property is a little different that comes to us. So it's kind of hard. I don't want to make a full-blown commitment because I don't know what additional properties may come forward over time. But the most recent ones, I think that we've worked with Councilmember Archibong on, would be fine with the 2 years. But I can't say that for every piece of property because I just don't know what those properties may look like.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that feedback. Ms. Smith.
Okay. I know we've done so much since we heard Councilmember Matsakite talk about this. I remember him talking about it, and I know I had a conversation with him about like fairness of money. Ms. Shepherd, I think you'll probably agree with me on this, but there are some pieces of property, like in the area that Ms. Shepherd and I represent, that Lake Charlotte was a huge piece of property, and that the price that we got it for was like, I don't know, $14,000 an acre or something like that. And I know that if we were to, when we buy acres of land in other parts of the city, you buy 1 acre of land for about the same amount that we spent on Lake Charlotte. So I want to make sure that this paper, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what Councilmember Matsakite, what he came up with on the substitute, but I do want to make sure that it's equitable for those of us that may have problems raising philanthropic dollars versus other areas that find it simple and easy to raise those philanthropic dollars. So, Ms. Park, does that make sense, what I'm saying? Is there any way that we can make sure that that is also included in this paper?
And I'll add a follow-up question. That was what gave me concern about the 20% cap in the original piece of legislation, and then that was removed in the substitute, which took away that concern. So, Ms. Burks, is that your understanding that the concern Ms. Smith just raised would have been an issue in the original draft, but is not one now?
Yes, we spoke with Councilmember Matsakite about the 20%, which did raise an issue just because you just don't know based on the property what that percentage will be for the maintenance, because you kind of need to look at it per property. The only concern right now, as I mentioned before, was really about what happens after the 2 years around maintenance of properties that we acquire.
And that's fair. And we'll have to.
Mr. Chair, I think what I'd like to do, this is Ms. Smith again, what I'd like to do is there any reason that this paper needs to move forward right now? We've been focused on so many other things recently. I just want to make sure, because I tend to get larger tracts of land, like Ms. Shepherd getting Lake Charlotte, my food forest, some of our larger tracts of land that we get for not much money, so that 20% does hurt us, and then our properties are much bigger, and so the maintenance is greater, whereas if you get just 1 acre and you've got that same amount of money, then it's not equitable. And I know that we're talking a lot about equity right now and trying to figure out equity. So that is something that I feel comes into play on this also. I think I'll make a substitute motion to hold it one more cycle, and I promise I will get in and work with Councilmember Matsakite and some others and roll up my sleeves and really find out, dig hard, and figure out exactly that we're all being treated equitable in this.
Sure.
Second,
But
Brown.
I don't think we actually need the motion or the second, because it was on held and there hadn't been a motion or a second to adopt. And so we can just leave it on held. That's certainly fine.
Well, do we want to contact Councilmember Matsakite in case he had a reason to pull it off? Ms. Pulladini,
Yeah.
do you know
He was-
what that was?
Yeah, no, there's no rush. He was unable to join us today, but he will be fine with holding this another cycle so we can talk a little bit more. Ms. Shepherd, do you have any other comments you want to make? Or
Ms. Burke, I know you all looked at other properties across the city, like for instance, you just referenced Ms. Archibald's property that she acquired. What typically are you all, as y'all do inventories across the city, what are you all looking at in terms of acreage, typically in terms of what you all see out there now? Because I know you all probably have a list of other places. What's the average, or can you give us any idea what that is? And if you can't do it today, maybe you can come back, we can hold this paper for another time.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. I don't have that readily available in front of me, but we can certainly get that back to you and members of the committee.
Okay. What was Ms. Archibald? What was her acreage? And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just curious.
I didn't have any acreage. I didn't have any acreage out of the Tree Trust Fund at all, so I don't know if referencing Park Impact Fee paper is
impact fee paper. Yep. Oh, okay. But how much? What was that acreage? Did anybody know what that was?
No.
Okay.
No,
thank you.
I don't. It was nowhere near Lake Charlotte or like her house, my house, 2 or 3 other people's house, right?
It was under it was under 2 acres. It was a small piece of property. It was under 2 acres.
All right, thank you. I'm just looking for an average of what we're looking at. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure thing. All right. Thank you, Councilmembers Smith and Shepherd. We will revisit that next cycle. Ms. Pulladini, next item.
Item number 29, 20-R-4009, a resolution by Councilmember Antonio Brown as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee establishing the Rodney Cook Senior Park Advisory Council to engage the community and provide recommendations on implementing policies and procedures for the future maintenance and improvement of the park and for the purposes.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, colleagues, we initially held this paper at the request of Councilmember Bond to give him time to sort through whatever needed to be sorted through. We do have the MPU chair, Jennifer McIntosh, who's on the call with us to speak to the community support of the advisory council. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you want her to come now or you want me to make a motion to approve or how you would like to move forward with this paper.
I will entertain your motion to approve and ask if there is a second by Councilmember Bond. If anyone has a question or comment for either the sponsor or the MPU chair, please signify by clicking your speaker button. If you have any other questions or comments, you're welcome to do that as well. If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
The motion and second is to do what now again? Repeat that, sorry.
Yeah, it's a motion by Brown and a second by Bond to approve 20R 4009, which is the Rodney Cook Senior Park Advisory Council to engage in the community and provide recommendations on implementing policies and procedures for the future maintenance and improvement of the park.
So it's motion by Brown, second by Bond. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The vote is open.
All right, 7-0 nays. That item is adopted.
And that concludes our legislative items, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Oh, there should be one more. The Cook Park that spoke to the chair about it.
Ms. Pulladini, that is item 20. 27, I believe.
Item number 27, 20-0-1334, an ordinance by Councilmembers Michael Julian Bond, Amir R. Faroki, and Cleta Winslow, as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee, authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city to enter into and execute a 50-year lease with the National Monuments Foundation, Inc. for city-owned property consistent with the maps contained in Exhibit A, whereby the terms of the lease will include the Foundation's development of the Peace Museum complex, which will include the Peace Column Museum, the Georgia Nobel Peace Pantheon, and 18 monuments to Georgia peacemakers at no cost to the city, and authorizing the waiver of City Code Section 2-1547 regarding the procedures for leasing city-owned real property for purposes of entering this lease, where said waiver is based upon the unique circumstances of the proposed park and requiring certain prerequisite transactions to occur prior to executing the lease and for other purposes.
I'd like to move approval.
Got a motion by Bond and a second by Faroki. Any questions or comments from the body? No, earlier we had a member of the law department who was raising their hand to speak for a paper, and I don't know if this was...
I would like to request to speak, please. Can someone here, does he hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Is this the MPU chair?
Yes, this is Jennifer McIntosh, MP Bell chair.
Okay. Hi, Ms. McIntosh. Thank you for commenting. I'm going to hang with me one second. If any members of the body have a question for you, we will certainly... No, it's fine. We'll certainly allow them to direct that your way. Mr. Ward, I don't know if you're here from the law department, and then received a note that the administration would like to make a comment as well. But before any of that, are there any members of the body who would like to speak?
Well, if I could speak to my motion.
Sure, Mr. Brown, and then, I'm sorry, Mr. Bond, and then after Mr. Bond, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that's been done by the administration and law department and members of the community over the last 10 years of bringing this project near fruition. As you know, we introduced this paper is almost 3 months ago. We're finally at the point where we will... I think somebody's talking. I need everybody, I guess, to mute their phones. I heard some talking in the background. But back to my comments. I just want to appreciate the work that has been done. We're finally at the point where we can get this unique park underway in approving the terms of this lease. Just to note that we've got all of the legal issues worked out. I spoke with Nina Hickson earlier today. We've been working with the administration to deal with some of the other park design issues, but they're not relevant to the lease. And of course, this park will be honoring historic peacemakers from Georgia, from the Civil Rights Movement, and I think that is more than appropriate at this particular time, given the issues that our nation is facing. And of course, there are those that are still with us who will be honored, who would like to see this park finally get underway and in development. Once the lease is approved, they should be able to break ground within the next 6 months. And this is something that the Vine City Civic Association is solidly behind. And so as a resident, lifelong resident of Vine City, I'm really honored and pleased that we're at this point, that we can construct this park in my neighborhood, in my community, and honor the work of our fallen colleague, Councilmember Ivory Lee Young Jr., who spent the balance of his last term with us, and of course, almost half of his terms in office, working to bring this park to fruition. This was his dying wish to see this happen, and I'm really very emotional now that we're at a point where we can begin to move forward, and would like to ask all members to stand with us and to approve it. And I'm available for any questions or comments anyone might have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Bond. Next up, we have Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Bond. Councilmember Bond, I just want to be clear, and you can answer this question for me. This park is going to move forward with or without this ground lease for the National Monuments Foundation. Is that correct?
Yes, the city is going to complete the park.
Okay. So, colleagues, just to give some background, Councilmember Bond and I spoke today in regards to him bringing forth this paper. I explained to him that I could not support this paper. The MPU doesn't support the paper. Members of the Vine City Civic Association also do not support the paper. So collectively, as much as I understand Councilmember Bond's perspective, I have to respect the wishes of the community as a whole. And the MPU voted to support standing up the advisory council before any lease agreements are initiated to give the opportunity for community to weigh in this. Councilmember Bond and I talked because he explained that this has been going on for 10 years, and I was explaining to him that the position of the community is, and you all will hear this from the MPU chair, but there are people that now live in this community, that have lived in this community over the last few years, that have not, that this park is going to directly impact, that have not had an opportunity to weigh into the decisions that are being made by the National Monuments Foundation. So unfortunately, I personally cannot support this because the community doesn't support it, and because they've made the request for the advisory council to be stood up before any execution of a lease agreement is put forth. And because the park is going to happen regardless, the city is going to open up the park with or without a lease agreement with National Monuments Foundation. I think it was important to ensure that the community had an input in the decisioning when it came to who would be operating on the grounds of the park. And Mr. Chair, that will conclude my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond.
Sure. Yep, Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your comments. I think there's a discrepancy of whether or not the Vine City Civic Association and the MPU support this project. MPUL is on record maybe half a dozen times supporting this project. The Vine City Civic Association is on record maybe a quarter of a dozen times or more supporting this project. There may be an individual or two or three or four or a dozen who might live within the boundaries of MPUL who do not support this project, but this project has been ongoing for more than 10 years. There have literally been hundreds of meetings with longtime residents, actual residents who live in the community over that period of time, in and around almost every facet about this park. If people have lived in the community longer than the last 18 months or 2 years, then they've had the opportunity to participate in a meeting that our fallen colleague, Councilmember Ivory Lee Young Jr., who has made this was his project, made it his business to talk to and engage the community in a way that most folks should imitate. So there's probably not another city project anywhere in Atlanta that has been vetted, that has been met about, that has been talked about than this particular project. And it's time to move. It's time to move ahead. The lease agreement, the legal impediments have been worked out, and it's time to move forward. I've lived in Vine City my entire life. I love the community, and the community solidly, my neighbors, friends I talk to, folks in the Vine City Civic Association are on board. And so as far as the vote on the advisory committee, it doesn't say anywhere in that legislation that the approval of the committee is contingent upon approval of this lease. That is not the procedure for an MPU to approve leases. That's within the province of the Atlanta City Council and the administration. And I'm supportive of the setup of the advisory committee. The ordinance that is before you now contemplates the creation of such a committee. We want the community's participation to continue in the way that it already has throughout this decades-long process where the community has been at the table. And so I would hope that we would go ahead and approve this ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I respond, please?
You may. You're next in line. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to reiterate just a few points, and I don't want to continue to go back and forth with you, Councilmember Bond. I respect your decision, and I'm not here. I have no dog in this fight. I'm just speaking on behalf of what the community has conveyed to me. I just received a message while you were on the phone that Bishop Lewis, who's the chair for the Vine City Civic Association, is not in support of this legislation, and nor has it come before the Vine City Civic Association body, this particular legislation. So I just want to be clear on that and be on record with that. The other thing that I think is important to make clear, I've spoken with Shalice Young, Councilmember Ivory Lee Young's wife, in regards to this. His work was the park. His work was making sure that the park happened and was built, and that's exactly what is happening. That was his legacy. His legacy is that this park gets built in Vine City and that it opens up and creates an opportunity for our community. And that's what's going to happen regardless if we support a ground lease for the National Monuments Foundation. And I think it's important to stress that, we're talking about two different things here. The park will continue, and the park, there has been, $50+ million put into this park. That was done through watershed management, that was done through philanthropic dollars to ensure that this park can happen. So this park is going to open and be amazing, and it's not contingent upon the National Monuments Foundation's lease agreement. So I don't want to compare those two to Ivory's legacy, because I've spoken specifically with Shalice Young, who has stated his legacy is the park and ensuring that the park gets open. And I also, Mr. Chair, think it's important that we hear from Ms. Jennifer McIntosh, who is the chair for MPUL, if we can call her forth to speak to the community's position on this specific legislation.
I would also like to respond, because I've spoken with Bishop Lewis personally, and Bishop Lewis is in support of the park, and also had the privilege of speaking with Ivory Lee Young Jr. himself and standing shoulder to shoulder with him on this council. And it wasn't just the park as his legacy. And I respect his wife. I love his wife. I was still with her last week as we prayed for the family of Sequoia Turner on the steps of City Hall. But it was Ivory and the Monuments Foundation that birthed this image of not just the park, but of the entire concept of making this a place of peace, a place of honor of those who have worked in the community on behalf of the civil and human rights for all. So it wasn't just the lay of the land that Ivory was concerned about. And I know that personally because he actually said it to me. He wanted to see this lease come to fruition. He was working on it when he died, and we talked about it at length when he was alive. And he talked to many of you who are on the committee. So The community is in support. I realize that the NPU as an umbrella for the city may not be supported. But I've spoken to many members of the community, and as they have been, the former NPU chairs, Linda Adams, and many other folks in the Vine City community, the Vine City neighborhood, where the park will actually rest, are in deep support of this lease, deep support of the Monument Foundation, and the vision that Councilmember Young conceived. So I would hope that we would vote for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. I hear you, Mr. Brown, and I will reiterate my request. If any members of the body would like to hear from the MPU chair, please signify by picking your speaker button. Mr. Johnson, Deputy COO, I understand you are on the line, and it would be helpful to hear your perspective.
Justin Johnson, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Oh, it sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So I just wanted to just offer up just a little bit more context. So we're currently evaluating the National Monuments Foundation's proposal from an operating perspective. So I want to just clarify that. And there are some outstanding issues that remain to be addressed. So the foundation and our Parks Department will continue to work to address the outstanding concerns as they work through the design review process, much like we would with any other project of this magnitude. So thank you.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. It sounds like you're reading between the lines would benefit from a bit more time on that front. Is that a fair characterization?
I'm sorry, I had to take myself off mute. Time, I guess, can be good, if you will, but that's certainly, there are a number of items that we certainly need to work through with NMF as well as our Parks Department, as well as the design review process. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like that.
Yeah, Mr. Bond, I was going to ask for your thoughts on that.
Thank you. They're meeting at my request. Mayor Bottom supports this project. And what the issues are that they're working through are design issues of the layout of the park. They're not germane to the lease or the lease agreement. The legal issues around the lease agreement have been resolved, and that is why the paper was held. There's a provision in the ordinance that says that the mayor will not sign off on the lease until everything is clear. So we need to move the lease, its approval, and those things that the Deputy COO talked about to be worked upon until that time.
Mr. Brown is next in line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Johnson. I just want clarity. Mr. Johnson, is the mayor in support of this lease agreement moving forward?
So as it stands right now, this is still at the level of working with the operating departments to really just work through some of the more material items. And so, there isn't a position at this point in time. We certainly need to do our legwork at my level and the department level before we elevate it to the mayor and to the COO for any additional, approvals, if you will. But any further, high-level conversation, I would certainly say, hey, we need to talk with COO and just make sure that we're aligned before. But I certainly am not in the position to certainly speak for the mayor at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Brown, I would not have introduced the legislation if I was not 100% sure that Mayor Bottoms wasn't supported.
Mr. Bond, I just asked the question for clarity.
No,
it's obvious I just wanted to know from Justin, who works in the office of the mayor and the administration, and it's obvious that this hasn't even reached the mayor, or to his knowledge, this hasn't reached the mayor's desk. Mr. Vaughn, if you're, for me, I can only go on the position of, as the city councilman for District 3, I can only represent the interests of the people. For me, I don't have a dog in this fight, whether it goes or it doesn't go. I can only represent what the people have said and spoken to, and that's my only position here. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
No, I understand. You're my councilman, so you represent me as well. So we're very clear, and I want to communicate to everyone listening, including the deputy COO and anyone else, that I would not have taken this action if I was not 100% certain of the position of the mayor, the current mayor of the city of Atlanta. That would be brash and unwise to do otherwise. So I introduced the legislation with the full understanding that the mayor of the city of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottom, the 60th mayor of the city of Atlanta, is in full support of this project and this lease. And of course, as I stated, there's a provision in the ordinance that if it doesn't meet her satisfaction, she's not obligated to sign the lease. But it is time to move it, given the fact that the legal issues have been resolved and worked out, which is why the paper was held in the first place, and the fact that from spiritual and sensitivity point of view, a couple of the honorees would like to see their legacy cemented before they're no longer with us. This will be a dynamic project, the likes we have not seen in Atlanta. This will be more than the King Center. This will be more than the museum dedicated to civil and human rights. This will be a destination for the world to come to Vine City from all over the planet. The Nobel Foundation, the C.T. Vivian Archive and Library, not just the monuments that will rest there. This is what Atlanta has said that it's all about. A city of peace, a city too busy to hate, a city that is the cradle of the home of the civil rights movement. And your own activity that has impressed me so much, the organizing, the demonstrating, this is a tangible symbol of all of those efforts of people who cried out for freedom that we can make real today with our vote. So again, I just ask the committee, I ask you as my councilman to support this lease and to let's move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Ms. Smith.
Okay. I want to take us back to the beginning. I know that I am, I'm just, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to join a Zoom 4 o'clock meeting and multitask, and we've got too many things going on here. Okay, so what Michael, I may be asking some questions that are just way too old. Was this the area in Vine City that was flooded a long time ago? Is that where this all started?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, I will tell y'all. I remember sitting next to Ivory. I know some of y'all are going to laugh at me, but he had this laptop that he carried around with him all the time, and he was always working on this part, and he was working on these statues, and he was working on making sure that everybody got honored, and he worked on this thing for years. And so, what are we voting on? And I'm asking both you and Mr. Brown, because I'm on another side of town. I know bits and pieces of this. So, and I know this had to have passed the NPU years ago, because y'all have been working on, I mean, the flooding happened in Vine City, what, in 2004 or something like that?
No, it was 2002.
2002. Okay, I was close, 2 years off. Okay, so that would have been 18 years ago. So the inspiration or whatever for this park, this piece of land, has been going on for 18 years. All right, so this paper that we're passing today, because I'm trying to figure out, we're saying, okay, if we don't pass this paper, the park is still going to happen. So we always kind of get into arguments, and it seems like every time the word Cook Park comes up, we get into arguments. So can I understand better why we have some dissension here with the park? Because if it's going to happen without this paper, then why are we arguing about it? And why do we need this paper? And so maybe y'all can explain that to me better and tell me exactly where the neighborhood stands and stood. Am I asking too much? Should I make a substitute motion to hold? What should we do here? Because this is ripping my heart out.
Councilmember Smith, this is Councilmember Brown. I think that
hold on one second. Hold on. Councilmember Smith has the floor. No one else has signed up to speak, and she hasn't relinquished it. So, Ms. Smith, why don't you direct where you'd like this conversation to go?
I think why don't we go in order here? Because Mr. Bond, I know that you were around in 2002 when all of this happened, the flooding and all that. And then Mr. Brown, we've got to give him credit that he is the council person for the district now. And that's one of the reasons that this is so hard for me, because y'all, I mean, I think we can all agree on one thing. We all loved Ivory. So anyway, so Mr. Bond, why don't you explain some of the history? And I know that you love this. Mr. Brown, I know that you love your district. So, Mr. Bond, explain to us what the park is, the vision for the park, and then exactly what this paper does. And then, Mr. Brown, if you will explain to me why it's not a good thing for the neighborhood. And I'm relinquishing the floor right now.
Thank you much. Mr. Brown, Mr. Bond and Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. You know, this started, it was a convergence of two ideas. One, the only Olmsted-designed park that does not exist, that Olmsted designed, was Cook Park. That park became absorbed into the footprint of the Bethune Elementary School on Northside Drive. The school still exists, but the park got absorbed as a playground, and over the years, it deteriorated. The school was built, I think, in 1950. Fast forward to the flood. The flood happened in Vine City. It wrecked that portion of the neighborhood there around Tyler Street, Vine Street. Mm-hmm. And so the watershed decided, and the city departments decided that they needed to build a retaining pond over there, much like the one in Old Fourth Ward. So there was going to be some city work done there to ameliorate I don't know if it's a 50-year flood or 100-year flood, but the flooding that occurs there, because it's near the top of the Parker Creek watershed, and also the natural spring, of which Spring Street is named, underneath, over there by the Georgia War Congress Center in Dome. The two efforts became merged as Ivory, as you rightly noted, began conceptualizing what can happen in the park. He began a relationship with Rodney Cook of the National Monuments Foundation, whose own family has fought for years to try to get the Cook Park revitalized. And so those efforts merged in the early 2000s. And so over the years, there have been hundreds of meetings, hundreds of votes by communities, NPUs, neighborhood associations in support of this effort over and over again. Countless community engagements of people who have lived there. Many people have died. Many people have come to the community. But up until Ivory's death 2 years ago, the community was behind the development of this park and the concept that the National Monuments Foundation is going to facilitate, that it become a park of peace, that pays tribute to those civil and human rights leaders that Atlanta is built upon. There was controversy around the name because the park was originally named after former Mayor Mims, who was Rodney Cook Jr.'s, I guess, great-grandfather, who was a former mayor of Atlanta and a former Confederate. And so the controversy really has been about the name of the park as opposed to what was actually going in the park or how the park is conceptualized. So the lease facilitates the high concept that Ivory envisioned and that he was working collaboratively with the National Monuments Foundation on. Yes, the city is going to build the park because in deference to its residents and its own interests, it needs to deal with the water flow issues in that particular area. But this is a park that would focus on highlighting the legacies of Atlanta and the legacies of human and civil rights activities and the persons who are responsible for that, contributing to the greater society. And it's also about Ivory's legacy. It's also about Ivory's work. It's also about Ivory's memory and the things that he was working on. You know, his mural is right across the street, looking and smiling right there where the park will be. So this is not just about the legacy of the statues, Booker T. White, W.B. Du Bois, MLK, whoever else is in the park, and not even really about this world destination of the Nobel Prize North American office that will rest in this park. That'll make it a destination for people around the world. You know, it's about Ivory's legacy and his work, and rightfully so. He carried that black leather bag with that laptop in it. You know, this was the central effort of his political service. And so that's where we are. Now, there have been many people who have not been pleased with the name that the park has, and they have continued to initiate efforts to try to get it renamed. And if they can't get it renamed, they provide loyal opposition to anything related to the park and its further development with the National Monuments Foundation. And like I said, you know, people like the statues, people like what's going to go there, but the focus of opposition really has centered around the name. And so there's been a lot of obfuscation and nuts kicked up saying that there hasn't been community processes or the community hasn't been at the table and all of this kind of a conversation. But the reality is that, as I said earlier, there really hasn't been any other project in Atlanta within the last 20 years that has been met about, talked about, discussed, and debated like this park. And as you rightfully pointed out, it is 18 years in the making. And if we're going to fully realize the vision of Ivory Lee Young Jr. and add an amenity to Atlanta that is like nothing else in the state of Georgia, in the southeastern United States, really in the world, then we need to approve this lease. They have the financing lined up. They're using an African-American financial institution. They have letters of commitment from all of the lessors who will be in the park. They've actually constructed 2 of the statues, one of whom is of John Lewis, that he has gotten to see, that bears his image is uncanny, that they have of him, that is ready when the park, is ready to be set up in the park. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But there's more that I could say, because there's a lot more that has happened. But it's true that Ivory gave his life, his work effort to making this happen. You're absolutely right about that. And it was about the entire concept, not just the park itself.
Thank you. Okay, so we have to have this agreement in order to put them, if you've already got one of the monuments or a statue in there, so why are we doing this agreement?
Well, because they need the agreement to get the financing, much like you would do any place else, or much like we've done with our other long-term leases. The John Lewis statue was paid for by a private donor. So the rest of the monuments and buildings will be financed over a term, much like you would build any other building. And they're also continuing to line up philanthropic donations to complete aspects of the park as they go forward. So having the lease agreement makes that possible.
All right, thanks, Councilmember Bond. Okay, so since this always seems to get contentious, okay, so Mr. Brown, can you explain to me why you're against this this agreement for us to do this park? If the park is still going to happen, why is the agreement bad?
Absolutely, Councilmember Smith. So just to kind of reiterate and give some backstory here, and keep in mind, I was kind of brought into this as a new council member that has been representing this district now for about, a year and a half. I kind of came into this and I had to research and understand what was transpiring so that I could make a decision based on what the community has requested of me. And what I determined was there was $20 million from the city of Atlanta, I believe an estimate around $20 million that was put in for land and infrastructure. The Trust for Public Land put in $13.5 million into the design, landscape, and the construction. The Arthur Blank Foundation put in $2.7 million. Now keep in mind, this project has been going on for about 10 years from start to finish as far as bringing in the funding that was necessary to move this project along. I think where the issue comes in at is that the National Monuments Foundation made a commitment. They entered into an agreement with the City of Atlanta, an MOA. It was a 4-year agreement to raise the necessary money to advance what they were seeking to do within the park. And I believe the number that was initially was stated within the amount that was supposed to be raised was $25 million. You have entities, and just to kind of go back to that, the reason why the agreement has not been renewed by the administration or the City of Atlanta, which is why Councilmember Bond is bringing it before this body, is because the agreement, the 4-year agreement has expired, and they have not raised the money that they said that they would raise in order to move this project forward. So they have not shown the financial capacity to be able to sustain building the statues and anything else that they're seeking to do within the park. Frank Fernandez from the National Monuments Foundation, he specifically stated in
Blank Foundation.
I'm sorry, the Arthur Blank Foundation, I apologize. He specifically stated that the organization lacked the capacity to finish the project and that the Blank Foundation didn't feel comfortable making a donation to the statue of the project. The Trust for Public Land, under George Duesenberry, who put in $13.5 million in this project, does not support the lease that has been brought forth by the National Monuments Foundation, nor do they support the initiative around the statues being put in the park. The National, George Duesenberry from the Trust for Public Land has specifically stated, hey, listen, if you all want to recognize, certain people in the park through a statue, we can do that. As the Trust for Public Land, we can make that happen, but we do not feel comfortable operating in the capacity in which is being presented by the National Monuments Foundation, especially after they have shown on countless occasions that they do not have the capacity to sustain an arrangement as they are requesting now, which is again part of the reason why Mr. Justin Johnston specifically stated that there are many open issues that are existing within this deal. It's not just around the design, it's around their financial capacity to support the design, the statues, and everything else that they want to do. And I think that's where the issues come in. I think that this notion about the name of the park, people are over that. I mean, no one has even voiced those concerns. The only concerns outside of the business of the city that has been raised by the entities that are vested into this project is that the community wants to stand up the advisory council and be able to weigh into what's going to happen when we consider.
The host has joined the conference.
And for us to consider who should come into the project. So that is the community's position of why they're not in support of this. And it is separate from the position of the Arthur Blank Foundation and the Trust for Public Land. So the issue is this entity's ability, and it's obvious based on what Councilmember Bond just stated, the reason why they're looking for us to rush into entering into this agreement is because they do not have the financial capacity to facilitate the construction of the statues and everything else in which they have stated that they were going to do. The community has also weighed in that, hey, if you're going to design something in this park, you need to honor the people that have been displaced due to the flooding and all the other reasons in which they were forced to leave this area and in which now a park is being built on. And that's also the position of the community. So for me, Councilmember Smith, everyone honors Councilmember Young's legacy. I mean, this park is his legacy. In its entirety, this park is his legacy. And no one questions his legacy or his commitment to this project. But as the District 3 council person, I have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that I am representing the interests of the community, but I'm also representing the interests of the individuals that have contributed to this park and have been the reasons why we even have this park in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I ask a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is the law department here? Is there anyone from law?
Yes, this is Michael Ward. As you can hear me, I'm on it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ward. Okay. So, now that I've heard all this, I'm still a little confused on why we need the lease agreement, we don't need the lease agreement. So can you tell me, why is a lease agreement necessary to install these monuments? Now, I know that they're saying that they need it for a loan, or something. Can you explain all of that to me from a legal standpoint?
Well, I can't speak to the need specifically for a lease agreement as opposed to some other agreement to allow them to install monuments. My comment earlier was going to be, what we did, what the paper in front of you addressed is the two legal concerns we had with regard to the form of lease that's attached as Exhibit B, with regard to the enforceability of those provisions. But that's all we did was comment on that aspect of it. We've not, we've not provided comments on much else in the lease. And I think as someone's administration said, what this paper does is authorize, if it's passed, the mayor to negotiate a lease in that form. But to answer the question, do we need a lease, or why do we need a lease to install those monuments? I defer to Councilmember Bond. It's one avenue to allow that and to lay out the terms of such installment and such operation and all that, but it's not the only means, I don't think.
Okay, so Mr. Bond, can you explain to me why we need a lease in order to get money for the monuments? And this is going to pay for the monuments. Is this lease agreement, are we going to have to maintain the monuments afterwards? And then I'm just going to throw this out there because Councilmember Bond, you've been working with me on some of the Confederacy stuff. I mean, I don't know if now is a super great time for monuments. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. So explain to me why we need this lease to install these monuments.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you, Mr. Ward, for that explanation. We need the lease for several reasons, because it's not just about the monuments. The National Monuments Foundation is acting in the capacity of a, and I'm saying this clumsily, as a project manager for the high concept of the Peace Park. And so you will not only have statuary in the park, you will have the C.T. Vivian Archive and Library, and of course you will have the North American office of the Nobel Foundation and other offices on site. And so to get a construction loan, just like if you were building a house, you would need a term contract on the land. And so as the Monuments Foundation is in this role as the contractor to build, they need a contract with the city to perform that. Yes, other people can donate to build a statue. Other people can raise money independently and what have you. But in this case, we're talking about the people who came to the dance with us, and that is the National Monuments Foundation. They came to the dance hand in hand with Councilmember Young and I to develop this concept and to develop the park. I want to clarify a couple of things. Yes, there's significant investment that the City of Atlanta is doing in this park, but what the National Monuments Foundation will do once this lease agreement is approved will be a $125 million gift to the City of Atlanta. They will maintain the monuments until the end of the lease and then turn those things back over to the city in 50 years when the lease expires. They are contributing a gift to the City of Atlanta that dwarfs what our initial investment is going to be. And also I want to point out that the people and the community is also generated within the park. And so, again, I want to add the statement that the community advisory panel needed to be in place in contemplation of approval of the lease. That's a false statement. There's no language in that resolution that speaks to that. When the item came before the NPU in, I guess it was April or May, there was no conversation around that. So that's a false statement. We have been at the table here, as you rightfully pointed out, Ms. Smith, for 18 years. trying to develop and help Ivory achieve his vision. It does not honor Ivory Lee Young Jr. To half-bake what he gave his public service life to. And so I'm asking members of the committee to allow us to approve the ordinance that allows us to negotiate the lease, subject to the mayor and law department's approval before it's finalized, so that we can move this project forward and do something that will make the Olympic Park look like, the backyard of the Clampetts before they move to California. Do something that will become an instant destination for people around the world to come to Vine City, come to the West Side community, and recognize and meditate on those who have literally changed the world with their human effort. This is something that has no comparison in the southeastern United States, period. No comparison at all. And the Monuments Foundation, they do have the financing. They have letters of commitment from their financier. They have letters of intent from those who would lease the properties to pay the debt on the loan that they will receive. They have all of their legitimate documents in hand, and they can be distributed to all members of council. So to say that they're not ready and all of that is also inaccurate. And the agreement expired during the period of negotiation this last year, where they had an agreement ready, or they had an understanding ready with Commissioner Dargle, and then for some reason the communication ceased in January, and it kicked up again back in April. So there was never an intention to stop talking and to stop negotiating. So this project is ready to go. We're ready to facilitate the vision of the whole community, of the community that has been at the table the entire time, ready to make Ivory Lee Young's total vision real. His total vision, which he shared with you, Ms. Smith, which I'm sure he shared with others who are on this panel. And as we contemplate honoring those in statuary and their legacy, I ask you to honor Mr. Brown's predecessor in his office. There are 3 former District 3 council members who are in support of this project. One was Councilmember Ivory Lee Young Jr., one was Councilmember Jabari Samama, and one is Councilmember Michael Junior Bond. And the current at-large member support this project. The lifelong Vine City resident supports this project. And I implore my council member to do the same. I hope that answered your question.
It did, thank you. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm going to relinquish the floor. I'm going to, if I want to speak again, I'll press my speaker button, okay?
Okay. Mr. Brown is next in line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Smith, for asking those important questions. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask a question of the chair for MPUL, Jennifer McIntosh, to be able to give some history of her perspective around the park and the community's position both in Vine City as well as the surrounding neighborhoods of this park. Can we do that, please?
Yeah, I said if anyone on the body had a question for the MPU chair, we would entertain it. Ms. McIntosh, could you briefly provide an answer to Mr. Brown's question?
Sure. My family and I have, just to give a little history, I wanted to start off and saying thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak during this committee meeting. My husband and I and our whole family have lived in the community for 7 years now. We have sat with Ivy Young, watched him go through the process. This is not about his legacy. We're not trying to destroy his name. We're not trying to defame him, none of that stuff. We know what he's about, and we know he was about community when we first came into this community. I have been the chair for MPUL for 2 years now. I have been a participant since we've been in this neighborhood, and I spoke to John Lewis, Bishop John Lewis, who is now the chair for VCCA today, and he knows nothing about this lease agreement. So it didn't come before the MPU while I was chair. This might have happened, I don't know what, I haven't seen Bond at any MPU meetings. I haven't seen Bond at any VCCA meetings. Maybe he's been there behind a meeting, I don't know. But Linda Adams has never been a chair of the MPU, and the people have changed. It's not the same old, same old. We have new people moving into the community that would like to have input of what's going on. And I recall stating, being at one of the meetings when the name of the park wanted to be changed, and it was evident that the National Monument Foundation or Trust, whatever you want to call them, did not have the money to start off with the park, and Arthur Blank was the one that began the construction of the park. I remember Fernandez standing up there and saying that. So I don't understand why the community is not given an opportunity to have somewhat say in all aspects of this park and where we're going to be living here for years, to have an input of what goes there. Because Jay from the National Trust Fund, we have not seen him come to the MPU since 2018 to give us an update on what monuments will be placed into the park. They have not been at VCCA to give an update of what's going on in the park, of what monuments will be there. The last thing we heard was Tamaichi and MLK, and that was it. We have not heard any updates or anything of what's going to happen with that park as a community. And we would like to have a say on what's going on. We'd like to have some input. And we just ask that you either put this on hold so that it can be included in the advisory council, or put it on hold until, because it sounds like the mayor doesn't know anything about this as yet, listening to the CEO, the administration from the CEO. It's not brought there. There's some issues listening to him today. There's some issues with this lease agreement. So before you put the cart before the horse, let's cross our T's, dot our I's, so that we do not have another situation like the Cook Park, where the community is going to come back to you all and say, hey, we don't know anything about this. Why don't we know this and why don't we know that? Because that's the same thing that happened with the naming of the park. So, and the same thing that happened with the zoning situation that was going on in Vine City and English Avenue. Kenyatta Homes had to have another meeting because of that before it came to the council. So I'm asking that you please, as a community member, as the chair for MPUL, that you please put a hold on this. And it's not, and once again, I don't know how much we can drill a nail into the hole with this. It is not about Ivy Young. He was a great man. He did great things. It's not about his legacy. It's about moving forward, because the community has changed. The demographics has changed. We're not dealing with the same old people from 2002. Most of them have moved out of the neighborhood. And the people that Bond is probably talking to are the same people, that 4 or 5 people. That's it. And I could count them, I can name them. Makeda Johnson, Linda Adams, John Lewis, Tillman Ward. These are our legacy residents that are in the community that are there and not sharing the information with the rest of the community. Things are changing. This happened in 2002, but things are changing, and we would like to have more residents have more input on what's going on. Thank you for your time.
Sure thing. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Brown, any other questions or comments?
No, and I just want to say to my colleagues, I'm extremely close to, the widow of Councilmember Young, Sharice Young. We've had very in-depth conversations about the park. She understands My position, I would never discredit the legacy of Councilmember Young. I'm inspired by his work. I'm inspired by who he is and what he was able to do as a council person. I think very highly of him. So I just want to make sure that this narrative doesn't get shaped that this is about Councilmember Young, because his legacy is the park, and the park is moving forward with or without this lease agreement. And it has been expressed time and time again that the National Monuments Foundation does not have the financial capacity to sustain this endeavor in which they are rushing the city to enter into. And I think that has to be taken into consideration outside of even just the community perspective. But I'll yield to you, Mr. Chair, so we can move forward.
Appreciate that. Mr. Bond, you are still signed up to speak. Do you have any additional or final comments? I have one more question for the administration, and then that may turn into a question for you, Mr. Bond, but at the moment you're next in line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a statement. I want to thank Mr. Brown, and I want to thank the MTU Chair. And I want to just say humbly that makes two of us that haven't seen each other. I've lived in Pine City for 50 years, and I don't see much of you either. But to the point at hand, Bishop John Lewis is on the record of supporting this project through his public comments when this legislation was first introduced. I can't speak to the conversation that the MTU chair had with him today or not, but I have spoken with him at length, and he left his public comments on the record as being in support of this lease. The National Monuments Foundation, they do in fact have the financing to complete this project. They have $8 million on hand. The Unity National Bank is committed to fulfilling the rest. As I've stated ad nauseum, they have the documented letters and proof that they have the financial ability to complete the project and to complete the lease. A lease, it is inappropriate for a lease that the city government would approve to go before the MTU, as the MTU is not a body that can sign a lease. The lease would only come before a committee such as this and the full body of the city council for ultimate approval. This is about Ivory Leon's legacy. This is about the last thing he had his handprints on, and it was the total vision of the park for us to do something unique, to do something that really has no peer in the United States, that will enhance the community that I live in and love beyond what it used to be seen as possible. This type of park, this type of effort has been underway, and I am pleased that the MTU chair has been serving for the last 2 years, but for the last 18 years, this is an effort, and residents who live in the community for a long time should not be discounted for their effort to birth this project and to see it come to fruition. I hope that the committee will support the legislation so that we can move forward, because now in the times that we have, we need a location, we need a concept like this in our world. So I hope to have you all support.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Mr. Johnson, I hope you are still here. I'd like to take it back to some comments that you made a long time ago around a review process that was taking place. That statement gave me a little pause about moving one way or the other today. And so I'd like a little bit of a timeline, if you could, on when you think that review will be completed.
Thank you. So I'll at this Parks Department to kind of get an idea as to what, to ensure that specific request of the National Monuments has been submitted, and that's their idea as to how long it would take. But also, a part of that design review process, we'll certainly need to make sure that we've engaged with DWM, Watershed, as well as the Office of Buildings. But what I'll do is get that information and run it through Charlotte, and she can communicate it out to all the members of the body. And I appreciate that. I'm going to get that to you by the end of the day.
Yeah, and I understand if it comes to that. Is there any, Ms. Butler-Burks, do you happen to be on the line? And I understand if we might not have a perfect timeline as in a date, but a matter of days or weeks would be helpful, at least to me. I don't know if it would be to anybody else on the committee, in terms of when to take action on this paper. Are you around and unmuted?
Hello.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the question. It's hard to give a timeline on this specific project because we have had the initial from the National Monument Foundation with some follow-up questions and answers. They are working on submitting some documents. And we are in the process over the next couple of weeks of scheduling with other departments to review as well and provide comments. So it's kind of hard to say that this is a big project, but we are giving it the needed attention. Even through COVID, we are finding ways to make sure that it continues to move forward through the park design review process.
I appreciate that. Mr. Bond, given those comments, what, if any, willingness would you have for the body to wait until that review process is complete before taking up action on this paper?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank those who spoke. But I want to remind everyone the information that the Parks Department has been reviewing, and they actually had a meeting, I believe, last Friday or Thursday. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But this is information that the National Monuments Foundation has submitted over and over again over the last 8 or 9 years. So this is what is actually going on is a refresher course for those who are at the table now in the Parks and Recreation Department. The National Monuments Foundation has submitted these drawings and all of this various types of information years ago. And so they're being refreshed. But having said that, those are not issues that would concern themselves in the least. So it is a separate set of operational issues that are not legal issues that pertain to the lease. So I would hope that we would go ahead and move forward, understanding that the council will not meet until August anyway. So whatever subsequent meetings they need to have can continue along the normal course as we move the legislation forward, hopefully for a vote at our next council meeting in August. I see the issues as separate. Yeah, they are separate.
Mr. Brown, are you signed up to speak? You are?
I am.
You intend?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that, and again, we should just determine if we're going to vote this one way or the other. I just want to point out that, Councilmember Bond spoke to the fact that the National Monuments Foundation has $8 million to move this project along, yet no one has been able to verify those sources of funds, which is also what has contributed to their need to have a lease agreement to attempt to raise the money that they need to sustain this project. So I think it's important to understand, no one questions the legacy of Councilmember Young within this discussion or debate. If anybody has sustained his legacy, I have. I've done a mural for him, honoring him. I named a street after him, honoring him. So if anyone has sustained his legacy, it has been myself as a newly council member on this council. I just think at this point, the issue is the financial capacity of the National Monuments Foundation, which they have not shown, And, you know, at the end of the day, you have the Trust for Public Land who has agreed to build these same statues without a lease agreement that at the end of the day, if the National Monuments Foundation doesn't sustain, the city will be responsible for. And I just don't think that this is a financially responsible arrangement to have at this point in time within this matter. And I yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Okay, I know I keep taking us back to what I consider sort of like elementary in order to make a decision about this, but I want to try to go ahead and pull this together. Like I said earlier, this project, I don't know why, but it seems to just bring up contention with people. So probably the most reasonable thing that I've heard today is about the timeline. The administration needs a couple more weeks. We've got our break coming up, so we've got actually more than a couple of weeks. We've got our break, and then when we come back, it would only add 2 more weeks, because if we vote on something now, we're not going to do the final vote until August anyway. So then just adding 2 weeks past that, I don't think that that's going to break the bank or any loans or whatever, because we got to wait for almost a month, or at least 3 weeks, almost a month now, before we go to our full council meeting. So I'm going to make a substitute motion to hold.
Okay. We have a motion to hold by Smith. I'll second that motion.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that motion.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Mr. Brown and Ms. Smith for their comments. But I want to start by correcting something that Mr. Brown said. The National Monuments Foundation does have the financing, and leases are required in deals like this. When Chastain Park was revitalized and under new ownership, they required a lease. The City Council approved one. Lakewood Amphitheater, there's a lease in place. The Botanical Gardens, there's a lease in place. You need the lease to do the financing. That's how these things are done. This is how the city has done them in the past. This is how the city will do them in the future. They have the letters of intent. They have their financing in place. There's no reason why the project cannot move forward. I would hope, again, and I didn't want to say this, but the 2 of the persons who are still with us, who are honorees, are close to not being with us anymore. And both are hoping to see this project come to fruition. And I would simply appeal to Ms. Smith to withdraw her motion to hold so that we can move this project forward. The issues that are before the administration are operational issues. They have nothing to do with the legal issues in the terms of the lease. They are separate issues. They're not legal issues, not pertain to what you would need to have in a lease agreement, and they're easily worked out. The questions that are there of probably landscaping and courtyard design of what the Monuments Foundation, how they might configure the monuments on the site. They have nothing to do with the lease at all, and are easily remedied if everybody can get on a Zoom call or in the same room. So I would speak against the motion to hold, and hopefully that we can move forward so that these 2 men who have done more than any of us, for us to be free Americans and free people, I would pray that we would show them deference so they could, if they happen to pass on to glory, that they can know that they've been honored in this way because they are concerned about it. So I hope that we would at least take the symbolic move, if not a motion to hold, a a motion to move forward on condition that if these meetings don't take place, then you hold it and send it back. But that they can recognize if they lay where they are, so they can have at least some semblance of peace before they're no longer with us. I would just appeal to you on that human level.
Archibong's been kicked off electronically, but would like to speak, and then after that, we are going to move to the vote.
So the question is, thank you very much, Mr. Westmoreland. My computer might be coming back. The question is for Mr. Bond. So the option that you want to either vote it up or to send it forward with no recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be satisfactory.
Okay, I don't support no recommendation. I always think the committee to do is work, keep more time with hold it. Very support that motion, but the fact thank you to have this be voted on upward, I would prefer to have that done.
You've broken up.
You're breaking up, Ms. Archibong. We're having a hard time hearing you.
I need to move my house to another location. But anyway, the reception is not as great as it should be. I'm saying that if the option is to vote it, bring it forward and vote with no recommendation, I rarely support that, so that's not an option for me. I would not support that. But your request as the author to have us voted up or down, I would support your deference in that regard, and so in that case, I would not support a motion to hold. So that was it. Thank you.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor by Smith, second by Westmoreland, in light of comments from the administration about timeline and review process. Would you please open that vote?
One moment, please. Vote is open.
I don't support the motion to hold. This is Archibong.
Will everyone please vote?
All right. Well, no, just kidding. Ms. Archibong is a no. Ms. Shepard is no longer with us, at least in this meeting. She's still with us in other ways. Will you go ahead and close the vote?
Yes, one moment, please. Vote is closed.
All right, 2 yeas, 3 nays. That motion is not carried. And so now the original motion to approve is on the floor. Mr. Brown.
I just want to correct it. It's 4 nays. Mr. Chair, Natalin is not accounted in the no.
Thank you. You are correct. So it's 2 yeas, 4 nays. That item is item failed, which means the original motion to approve is on the floor. I've expressed my reservations already about moving this forward at the time without a message from the administration on their review process one way or the other. But if there are no other comments from the body, we can open that vote.
One moment, please.
Excuse me, we're voting on a motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Vote is open.
But the motion should be made by Mr. Bond.
Yes, and we have Councilmember Froki as the seconder.
All right, 3 yeas, 3 nays. That motion does not carry. In this instance, does this go back to being on held, or do we need to take a vote to?
I'd like to make a new.
Mr. Chair, pursuant to Section 2-133, subsection E, any motion that does not receive a majority vote in committee remains held in committee.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Bond, you're signed up to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move forward on condition that whatever subsequent meetings happen with the administration prior to the council meeting.
A motion on the floor.
Second, Faruqi.
And a second by Faruqi.
What are we doing now? Are we not finished yet?
Not yet. We've got one more motion, and it's to move forward on condition, at which point I suspect we will be in the same spot.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, 2 yeas, 0 nays. That motion also fails, which means this item will remain held in the body. Mr. Bond, and then Ms. Archibong, and then we really are going to adjourn.
Well, I just want to explain my vote. I would hope, and I'm severely disappointed that we were not able to move this legislation forward. Even more disappointed than the two gentlemen whom I hold in tremendous esteem may not live to see this project at least advanced. I am very, very distressed by that. You know, there are issues, and then there are issues, and the department's holding up something this important over the landscaping, because that's really what it amounts to. The landscape plan of this project is severely distressing, that we don't have more deference for those who delivered us, helped to deliver us to a better place. You know, I'm flabbergasted, really. But I hope and appeal to members who voted the other way that you would be open to conversation and dialogue so that we can move this forward, so that our colleagues' legacy can be fully realized. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Archibong.
I want to make a motion to adjourn.
By Smith. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.